Chapter 1382. Because she had to hide her identity as the World King of the Divine World, Awan couldn't directly teleport in. She took Lotus Sun on a road that led to the main city district. This road was very wide, but uneven. There were mountain ranges along the way, and Divine Tao Star's 100-meter-tall ancient tree stood tall, its branches blotting out the sky and the sun, giving it a primordial air. Awan summoned 2 huge rabbits as mounts, and they galloped along the road. The rabbits were extremely fast, but they didn't feel the slightest jolt when they sat on them. These were 2 old mounts which Awan had carefully cultivated. The 2 rabbit ears on top of their heads gently supported their buttocks as they moved, so that there was almost no impact when they landed. AI. That's great. Sun Yinger sighed at that moment. She had clearly been autistic before they set off. But it looked like she was very good at adjusting her mood. What's great? Asked Lotus Sunday. This rabbit can actually touch Rongrong's butt directly. I'm jealous. Sun Yinger said, Rongrong, imagine if it wasn't a rabbit's ears under you, but Lingzhenren's. Shut up. At that moment, a number of figures appeared in front of them. Lotus Sun saw a number of lizard guards passing by. These were the ordinary patrol guards on Divine Tao Star. When they saw Awan's rabbit, these guards consciously moved to the side. After Divine Tao Star went out of control, the Divine Dragon clan had organized a large number of guards. They were responsible for organizing the extraterrestrial creatures that had been accidentally swallowed by Divine Tao Star. For the time being, they were gathered somewhere and settled down. Previously, Divine Tao Star swallowed too many extraterrestrial planets, resulting in all kinds of completely different extraterrestrial creatures and civilizations on Divine Tao Star. Now that Divine Tao Star has finally returned to normal, who would have thought that it would go out of control again? Awan sighed, and then she told Lotus Sunday. This rabbit was a special mount for aristocrats on Divine Tao Star, and the Divine Dragon clan had to give way when they saw it. So Awan, you're an aristocrat now? Lotus Sun sat steadily on the rabbit and smiled. Hey. A disguise is a disguise, but I can't disguise myself too outrageously. It won't be easy if I pretend to be a poor person. If I run into trouble, I'll have to expose my identity as a world king. Won't that be even more troublesome? Awan stroked the rabbit's fur. It's much more convenient with the divine rabbit around. They will only appear in 2 places in God's domain. Which 2 places? Under the buttocks of the nobles, and in the dining hall. Awan said, the spicy rabbit head is very delicious. F restaurant. Lotus Sun said. She felt that these rabbits were so pitiful. They are all divine rabbits who made mistakes or died of old age. They actually wish that they could be eaten. Awan smiled and said, being eaten by the gods can allow them to enter reincarnation in advance. In front of the main city, Lotus Sun saw that emerald green figure in the distance. Loopy Toad had already been waiting there for a long time. Lord Ma's teleportation was so precise that Loopy Toad didn't have to take many detours. It had arrived roughly 15 minutes before Lotus Sun arrived. Lotus Sun, you came so quickly, Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad jumped up and climbed onto the divine rabbit's back. Lotus Sun hugged Loopy Toad and couldn't help rubbing its face. You guys are too slow. So why didn't you ask Lord Ma to send you here? Loopy Toad asked. Awan took me to see a lot of Divine Tao Star scenery along the way, and I feel that this place is a little like the primeval times described in books, Lotus Sun replied. Of course, it could also be that the author wanted to reduce the number of words. Loopy Toad was enlightened. The main city isn't like it, it's quite modern. You've been here before? You've never eaten pork, but you've seen pigs run? Little Master Ling came here with Miss Bai Qiao and the others before, and Miss Bai Qiao integrated the scenery of Divine Tao Star into her cultivation simulator, Loopy Toad said. Speaking of cultivation simulator, Loopy Toad heard that Bai Qiao was about to start an open beta without deleting files, which would definitely be a hit. It remembered that Wang Ling had previously set up a character called Qin Zong. After the official open beta, this Qin Zong would appear as an NPC as an Easter egg in the game. After following Ah Wan into the main city, Lotus Sun saw a place where members of the Divine Dragon clan would receive and stay. It looked very much like a black driver who had arrived at some city station and asked outsiders if they wanted to take a taxi. But these members of the Divine Dragon clan didn't disturb Lotus Sun and the others. The Divine Rabbit was a symbol of aristocracy, and the aristocrats in the main city were either rich or respectable. They were very tactful and knew that they couldn't afford to provoke them. Rumble. There was a rumble up ahead, and even the ground was shaking. A team of black armor guards riding several meters long ancient lizards passed by, as if they were on urgent business. Everyone, get out of the way. These ancient lizards were huge and fierce, but they moved extremely fast as they swiftly led the team of black armor guards forward. Hey, it looks like something big is happening up ahead. Ah Wan frowned. The black armor guards in the heart of the city wouldn't be mobilized easily. These were all very powerful members of the Divine Dragon clan. Once they gathered together, it meant that something big had happened that ordinary guards couldn't handle. I can feel a resonance, Lotus Sun said at that moment. From the moment they entered the heart of the city, she had sensed Mysterious Sea trembling slightly. There's already a resonance? Ah Wan was surprised. Lotus Sun nodded. She spread out Mysterious Sea's sword Chi and had the Divine Rabbit under her lead the way in the direction of the resonance. In the process, Lotus Sun realized that they were actually following the team of black armor guards who were rushing through the market in a tyrannical manner. When they reached the place where the resonance was the strongest, the black armor stopped, and so did the Divine Rabbit behind them. The three women were astonished by the scene in front of them. There was actually a huge sinkhole in front of the Divine Palace in the heart of the city. It had a radius of over 100 zhang. Something's wrong with this sinkhole. Loopy Toad instinctively sensed the danger of this sinkhole. I'm afraid it has something to do with the Heavenly Tao Magic Cube, Lotus Sun said with certainty. She could sense that the sword Chi she had emitted from Mysterious Sea was being sucked into this sinkhole in front of them. What's going on with this sinkhole? Miss Ah Wan asked one of the black armor guards. The black armor guard was a little impatient at first, but when he saw the Divine Rabbit Ah Wan was sitting on, he answered honestly, it suddenly sank in, and the number of casualties is still unknown. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and it was clear that he didn't know how to deal with the situation in front of him. Wan nodded. I order you to organize people at once. Seal off the surrounding area and evacuate the area as soon as possible. Leave this to us. She then turned her gaze to the sinkhole in front of her. This sinkhole was very dangerous, and gave off an extremely terrifying aura of nomological laws. The Heavenly Tao Magic Cube was in this sinkhole. The cause of its formation was unknown. But the only thing they could do now was to go down and find out for themselves. Rongrong, are you ready? Ah Wan asked at that moment. No problem. Lotus Sun perked up. Jump. Ah Wan then gave the order. The Divine Rabbit they were sitting on didn't hesitate in the slightest as it directly jumped into the sinkhole. F***K, Captain. They really jumped. I'm not seeing things, right? And that human girl looks like she's only at the Foundation establishment stage. How dare she jump? Watching helplessly as Lotus Sun jumped in, one of the black armor guards was stupefied. At that moment, the captain of the black armor guards frowned and said, "Stop looking. Everyone, organize people and evacuate according to that lord's orders. But they're just nobles, they don't seem to have the right to interfere with our actions, stupid. Didn't you hear that curly-haired girl's NEI just now?" The captain of the black armor asked in return, "How many old Swana players like her are there on our Divine Tao Star?" So it's His Majesty World King. Realization dawned on all the black armor guards at that moment. But they still couldn't figure out why World King would bring a Foundation establishment girl with him. What was the use of a Foundation establishment cultivator? Coming here was courting death. Chapter 1383. The sinkhole was very deep, and Lotus Sun used her sword Chi to probe it. The vertical distance from here to the deepest part of the sinkhole was at least 20,000 meters. As she fell, she saw a few divine dragon clansmen clinging onto the protruding rock wall, lying on the steep rock wall. These were the people who had fallen in the sinkhole the moment it had formed. And they were lucky. They had grabbed the protruding rock wall and survived. There were probably even more people who had fallen directly into the ground. Mysterious Sea. Lotus Sun couldn't bear it and called out to him. She used Mysterious Sea's sword chi to form a gentle stream of sword chi to send the despairing members of the divine dragon clan she had seen lying on the rock wall back to the ground. I'm afraid there are tens of thousands of people who have fallen directly to their deaths. Loopy Toad sensed it roughly. In such a large and deep sinkhole, there were countless souls drifting nearby. It could clearly sense them. As a professional who relied on devouring souls all year round to strengthen himself, almost no one except Wang Ling could compare to him in terms of sensing souls. I'll deal with these divine dragon clan members who died in vain later. Don't worry, Rong Rong. Wan sighed. This was an undeserved calamity, and no one wanted to see this result. Will they be resurrected? They can choose according to their own wishes, Wan said. Reincarnation and resurrection are both paths. But I think most of the divine dragon clan members who die accidentally will choose to reincarnate. Those who can live here in the heart of the city should all be nobles, right? That's a matter of culture and belief. The divine dragon clan has always believed that after reincarnation, their lives will be better, Wan replied. After another 2 minutes or so, Lotus Sun suddenly felt that something wasn't right. Wan, I've already measured the depth of this sinkhole with my sword chi. Logically speaking, we're already close to the ground, so why are we still falling? Something was wrong. Wan also thought it was strange. The string of beads on her wrist was glowing. These were beads polished from the godly bones of an old god, and each was crystal clear and exuded a powerful divinity. She separated one of them from the string and then shot it deep into the ground. Powerful godly power poured down like a spirit sea, illuminating the abyss below with an unstoppable force. It was accompanied by countless glittering divine feathers that drifted down. Lotus Sun felt that their falling speed had suddenly slowed down a lot. There was a force entrenched under the divine rabbit's feet, gently lifting all of them up. This was a divine cloud formed from the old divine sense beads. What's going on? Lotus Sun was puzzled. Haven't you noticed yet? We've already entered the domain of the magic cube. In other words, we're currently in the heavenly Tao magic cube, Loopy Toad said patiently in a calm tone. After all, considering that it was the girl's first time on a mission, it was normal for her to lack experience when faced with all kinds of unexpected situations. When cultivating, one must not be ashamed to ask for help. It was the same with learning. However, if one felt that the author's writing was too short, it was useless to urge the author to update, because it might really be too short. Loopy Toad's reminder was like a wake-up call. Lotus Sun grasped the mysterious sea and used it to sense the heavenly Tao magic cube once more. However, she discovered that the mysterious sea's sword chi was no longer descending like it had been at the beginning, but was instead spreading out in all directions. This happened to confirm Loopy Toad's words. They were in the heavenly Tao magic cube. Everyone stood on the divine cloud and gazed at their surroundings. It was pitch black all around them, and the only source of light was the glowing godly feather drifting down. The godly feather was now an excellent source of illumination. Good thing I have a lot of wings. Wan was actually a little proud of this scene. Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad, I remember the monk telling me that when they destroyed the unspeakable, the heavenly Tao magic cube was a very small piece. It would have been effortless to recover it. What's going on now? But Wan was also puzzled by the scene in front of them. At that time, the heavenly Tao magic cube wasn't missing, and there were still 9 complete pieces that kept each other in check, so it naturally didn't go berserk. But now that there are no checks and balances, the rest of the cubes could go berserk at any time. Loopy Toad guessed, if I'm right, this is the heavenly Tao's secret room that little Master Ling was talking about. Ling Zhenren said that? Before I came here, he gave me some basic knowledge about the Heavenly Tao Magic Cube. After all, young Master Ling had to understand the structure of the Heavenly Tao Rubik's Cube in order to recreate it. Now that we have been swallowed by the magic cube, it is the same as being trapped in a chamber. Loopy Toad said, the Heavenly Tao Magic Cube has a total of 26 secret rooms, which are connected in series, but only one of them has a real exit. Young Master Ling told me all of this. After all, this was the first time a new member was participating in this mission. Before he left, he gave Loopy Toad all his research notes on the Rubik's Cube in a simple and crude manner. Loopy Toad didn't dare slack off, and memorized everything it saw. It was as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had said. This mission was indeed risky. As for understanding the Rubik's Cube, it was also to ensure that the mission would be foolproof. In addition, in the research notes, other than information about the Heaven's Tesseract, there was also a request from Wang Ling. Although his little Master Ling didn't speak often, it was indeed the first time that he had written so many things to take note of for this mission. Loopy Toad tilted its head slightly and gazed at the girl's face in the light of the divine feather as she hugged it tightly. Lotus Sun was nervous. Loopy Toad could clearly sense it. And the start of the mission was indeed not in their favor. But since it already fully understood the structure of the Rubik's Cube, Loopy Toad was confident that it would be able to smoothly escape from the Heavenly Tao Magic Cube's secret room and retrieve the second Rubik's Cube. There are 3 elements needed to escape a secret room: the door, the clue, and the key. Loopy Toad said concisely, since Divine Tao Star is a token of love that Tao ancestor Wang gave to Old God, the elements of the secret room must also be related to their story. This is the abyss. What does the abyss represent? The abyss usually indicates danger. Does that mean that the relationship between Tao ancestor Wang and Old God is very difficult? Lotus Sun guessed. Not necessarily. Sun Yinger shook her head. It could also be referring to Old God's giant abyss mouth. Giant abyss mouth? Lotus Sun was startled. Soon after, she seemed to have thought of something embarrassing, and 2 clouds of steam formed into a long dragon and spurted out from her ears. Hey, is she always like this? Ah Wan's face twitched. What the hell kind of nonsense was that? Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand. Ah Wan, I've embarrassed myself. Ah Wan, hey. As expected of Rongrong's shadow, you're the complete opposite of you. Lotus Sun was also helpless against Sun Yinger's flirtatious behavior. But it had to be said that Sun Yinger's words had actually given her a hint. Since they wanted to crack the secret room, the most important thing was to find the door. But now, they couldn't see the door, so maybe the door was hidden. I know. Thinking this, Lotus Sun straightaway pulled out Mysterious Sea. She gripped the hilt and abruptly threw it down into the bottomless abyss below. At that moment, Mysterious Sea turned into a spear-like existence, its body glowing faintly and intimidatingly powerful. Then, everyone heard a crack at the bottom of the abyss, which sounded like glass shattering. There was a hidden restrictive barrier that Mysterious Sea had pierced through. Chapter 1384. Reincarnation Ghost Hits the Wall. I see. Ah Wan instantly understood. It wasn't that this abyss was a bottomless pit. It was because of the reincarnation ghost hits the wall restriction below, which forced them to fall in a certain direction and then start falling again, creating a kind of perpetual motion. After realizing this, Lotus Sun immediately took out her sword to break the restriction, thus freeing the hidden entrance. Mysterious Sea's sword was fused with a Heavenly Tao magic cube. With the power of resonance, Mysterious Sea was the best weapon to break the restriction. Let's go. Ah Wan gave the order on God Cloud. The 2 divine rabbits led everyone into the passageway leading to the second secret room. In the instant that the person jumped in, the entrance immediately closed, and it was sealed almost instantaneously. When they came back to their senses, Lotus Sun and the others had appeared in a cave. Rongrong, we did it. Sun Yinger was excited. That's not enough. Just knowing how to get through the secret rooms isn't enough. Lotus Sun frowned and analyzed. If it's really as Loopy Toad said, and the 26 secret rooms are interconnected, then as long as we don't know which secret room the real exit is, it's useless even if we crack all the mechanisms. That's true. Loopy Toad nodded. If we don't know which secret room the real exit is, we'll just be wasting our time going all the way. I think the clue to the exit must have something to do with the story of Tao Ancestor Wang and Old God. As she spoke, she began to size up the second secret room. It was a very wide cave, but one could see the end of it at a glance. 3 lamps hung on the stone wall near the cave. This is the eternal fire of the divine world. Old God made the wick from his divine feathers, and it can burn for thousands of years. Even if it's accidentally extinguished, it can automatically reignite in 3 seconds. Wan immediately recognized the origin of the wall lamps. The structure of the cave wasn't complicated. There were 3 scrolls hanging on the stone wall. The scrolls glowed as if they were suspended in midair, flowing with a mysterious power. These 3 women represented 3 different ages. The first scroll depicted a child who looked to be about 6 years old. She was wearing a red dress and a pair of black leather shoes. Her face was filled with childishness, and when she smiled, her deep dimples made her look extremely cute. The second painting was of a young girl in the prime of her life. She wore a long red dress, and her skin was fair. Her eyes were clear, and she gave off the feeling of first love. The third painting was of a benevolent-looking old granny. She was sitting in a rocking chair with a wine-red blanket draped over her body. The painting showed a sense of déjà vu from the passage of time. The 3 scrolls appeared side by side, emitting an enormous pressure. Who is the woman in the painting? Lotus Sun asked curiously. I can't be wrong. This was an old god. It's the old god's 3 ages. Wan looked at the painting in front of him and couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. She was sure that she wasn't mistaken. The 3 paintings were indeed drawn by Lao Shen. Her dimples were the best proof. Old divinity is actually so beautiful. To Lotus Sun's surprise, Wan actually sighed. Her strength had clearly been bestowed upon her by the old god, but this reaction was like seeing her for the first time. Is this your first time? Lotus Sun asked curiously. Yes. Only a handful of people have seen the old god in her old age. Wan said, the old god I saw was already a skeleton. She had already transcended her physical body and turned into an ancient god. Is that what pink skeletons mean? Loopy Toad laughed in its heart. It looked at the 3 paintings in the cave and said, these 3 paintings were all hand-painted. I'm afraid that Tao Ancestor Wang is the only one who can see the old god's 3 ages, right? Then, did Tao Ancestor Wang get to know the old god when she was very young? F***K. So Tao Ancestor Wang is a bronze-refining warlock? Sun Yinger turned pale with fright. Don't talk nonsense. You're looking at it the other way around. Actually, according to age, it should be from right to left. The old god's first appearance was that old granny's portrait. Wan said, the reason why the old god is called the old god is because she was very old in the beginning. She regained her youth, which is the opposite. The younger she is, the older she is. When I saw the old god, she was an ancient god the size of a baby. That is to say, Tao Ancestor Wang doesn't care whether the old god is beautiful enough or not, right? Lotus Sun was extremely envious. This kind of love that didn't pay attention to appearance but traced back to the soul was something that everyone looked forward to. Emotions were something that could transcend time. Even if they were at different times, as long as you missed them enough. There would come a day when these emotions could be transmitted to the person you liked. The old god has accompanied Tao Ancestor Wang for his entire life, but Tao Ancestor Wang's lifespan is too long. In addition to that, he has the physique of rejuvenation. This makes it impossible for the old god to continue accompanying Tao Ancestor Wang. Wan sighed. She felt that the topic was getting heavy. Tao Ancestor Wang must have another way, right? Lotus Sun asked. Perhaps. But choosing to leave was in fact the old god's own choice. As a newly appointed world king of the god world, one actually didn't know much about emotions. The old god had only passed on her power, but hadn't passed on her love history. What Awan knew now was what she had heard from the other gods. If she hadn't personally experienced the heavenly Tao magic cube's secret room, Awan probably wouldn't have been able to experience it until now. The deep emotional bond between the old god and Tao ancestor Wang. These 3 paintings are all Tao ancestor Wang's work, right? I feel like there's a lot of energy in them. Lotus Sun frowned. At that moment, Loopy Toad couldn't help but laugh in its heart. Perhaps Tao ancestor Wang had indeed put a lot of effort into these 3 paintings. But when it came to energy, Loopy Toad was a little unconvinced. Even though its little masterling had casually written a test paper, the energy seeped out from the words on it was very strong. It was just that ordinary cultivators' realms were too low and couldn't sense it. As for the astonishing energy in the 3 paintings in front of Loopy Toad, Tao ancestor Wang had probably deliberately exposed them. It was like a pledge of love. Tao ancestor Wang was using these 3 paintings to tell everyone about the strong feelings between him and the old god. I know how to pass this round. At that moment, Lotus Sun was struck by inspiration again. 3 eternal lamps, 3 paintings of Tao ancestor Wang. This was actually already a hint at the password to pass this round. Wan, go to the other 2 lamps. Lotus Sun took the initiative to go to the rightmost lamp facing the old grandma's painting. She then said, after I blow it out, blow the second lamp, and Wan, blow the first lamp. The sequence of rejuvenation? Got it. Wan nodded. Because the wicks of the eternal lamps could be reignited, it was extremely difficult for one person to do this alone. As everyone knew. Like a game like Escape Room. This was a multiplayer sport. Funny, not only could it hone the teamwork between teams. At the same time, it also proved that Kushwan indeed didn't have a draft. Chapter 1385. She used the sequence of the 3 paintings to extinguish the flames of the eternal lamps, thereby unlocking the passage to the next secret room. The girl's cleverness was once again exemplified in cracking the mechanism. Sometimes, the level of one's realm had nothing to do with IQ. Fools with high cultivation levels also existed in the cultivation world. They were only particularly talented in cultivation, that's all. When the 3 eternal lamps were pressed at the same time, the mechanism leading to the next secret room was triggered. The 3 paintings in front of him glowed faintly in the dark cave and turned into 3 entrances. It looks like we'll have to split up. According to the normal script, we'll find a rendezvous point later. Loopy Toad said, I'll go to the middle entrance. Everyone, please be careful and pay extra attention. Everything you see after this might not be real. Is there an illusion? Lotus Sun asked. Definitely, Loopy Toad said. So the best question is to ask questions. If you know something more private, it might be the real one. Got it. Lotus Sun and Wan nodded. Before they set off, Wan temporarily put the divine rabbit back into his inner world. They had a clear division of labor, and then each entered the paintings in front of them. This was truly a solo mission. Without Loopy Toad and Awan's guidance, Lotus Sun didn't know if she could do it. But with and Mysterious Sea around, she felt a little more at ease. The 3rd secret room was very different from the abyss and cave in front. It was a very bright place. A mirror maze? Lotus Sun found herself trapped at the entrance to a mirror maze. She couldn't turn back after passing through a secret room. She turned around, and sure enough, the entrance to the paintings had already disappeared. I wonder what kind of secret room Loopy Toad and Wan encountered. Lotus Sun frowned, then summoned her courage and walked forward. She tried to use Mysterious Sea's sword chi to cover the entire mirror maze and find the most suitable route. In the end, perhaps because of the resonance with the heavenly Tao magic cube, Mysterious Sea's sword chi was particularly scattered here. Thus, her plan to use sword chi to break through the maze failed. Lotus Sun used Mysterious Sea to make marks on the ground. After walking around a few times, she found that she had actually returned to the starting point. That wasn't all. Lotus Sun tried to use Mysterious Sea to break the mirror. When the mirror broke, a ray of light would come out and bring her back to the entrance. It's useless to walk aimlessly, Rongrong. Sun Yinger said. Yes, I know. Lotus Sun nodded. But what does this mirror maze mean? The abyss and caves that they had passed through earlier were all related to the story of Tao ancestor Wang and the old god. Lotus Sun was completely clueless about the mirror maze in front of her. Perhaps if Miss Awan was here, she might be able to connect the dots. But Awan wasn't by her side right now, so she couldn't listen to old god's story through him. All girls have their own mirror, right? Maybe there are so many mirrors related to the old god? Sun Yinger said. This gave Lotus Sun another hint. She took the initiative to walk over to a mirror and began to stare at herself in the mirror. Sun Yinger exclaimed, Rongrong is so beautiful. Also, I think Ling Zhenren will like Rongrong even without makeup. What does this have to do with classmate Wang Ling? You're spouting nonsense again. Lotus Sun said helplessly. But when she looked at the mirror, she did indeed notice something very strange. Also, I actually didn't put on makeup today. But look at this mirror, doesn't it have a built-in beautifying effect? A built-in beautifying effect? Sun Yinger was blank. She looked carefully at the mirror and found that it was indeed the case. Whitening the skin wasn't a big deal. In the mirror, even the shape of her face was starting to sharpen. Then, she took another step forward. She switched to another mirror and found that this one's beautifying effect was even more ridiculous than before, I think. I know how to get through this. Lotus Sun was enlightened. All the mirrors in this mirror maze had different beautifying effects, mainly on the widening of the skin and the chin. The sharper the chin, the deeper they were in the maze, which also meant that there was only one correct path. After repeated comparisons, Lotus Sun finally followed the clues and found the last mirror. Rongrong, your chin is about to become an awl, you can use it to chisel ice. Sun Yinger stared at Lotus Sun's beautiful face in the mirror and couldn't help laughing. This should be the exit of the maze. Lotus Sun took a deep breath. If she wasn't wrong, as long as she broke this mirror, she would be able to get out. Ha! With great effort, Lotus Sun pulled out Mysterious Sea and cut this excessively beautifying mirror in two. This time, when the mirror broke, there was no light to send her back to the entrance. In front of Lotus Sun was a set of dilapidated stone steps that led to an ancient temple. On both sides of the path was lush ancient trees, their thick trunks intersecting with each other on the ground. There was actually another world behind this mirror. It was an unknown ancient jungle. Lotus Sun was a little hesitant at first. But when she thought that Loopy Toad and Awan might have already left the secret room, she summoned up her courage and continued forward. If nothing unexpected happened, they might meet again in this ancient jungle. The dilapidated stone steps under her feet led to the top of the mountain. They were engraved with intricate ancient runes, which gave off a natural oppressive aura. Although the girl was only at the foundation establishment stage, she had Mysterious Sea's sword chi to protect her, so it was effortless for her to walk. Halfway up the mountain, Lotus Sun saw a familiar figure scurrying out of a small path in front of her. Loopy Toad. Lotus Sun waved in greeting from afar. However, Loopy Toad's gaze was especially vigilant. It hurriedly took a few steps back and looked at the girl with hostility in its eyes. Lotus Sun immediately recalled what Loopy Toad had said earlier. After they separated, they might see illusions. To avoid being misled, they needed to ask each other questions to verify their identities. Let's ask each other questions. Lotus Sun said. Okay. Loopy Toad nodded and accepted the suggestion. What's your favorite food? Lotus Sun asked first. Fly. Big meat fly. Loopy Toad's answer was very decisive and without hesitation. Then it said, then, it's my turn. Before it asked the question, Loopy Toad didn't forget to glare at Sun Yinger. Girls on the side, don't interrupt. After she answers, I'm going to test you. Little. Sun Yinger stuck out her tongue. Loopy Toad took a deep breath and smiled evilly at Lotus Sun as it asked, "Tell me. Who do you like the most?" Lotus Sun's face instantly turned red. "Don't use relatives to fool me." Loopy Toad's expression was very serious. "It has to be a human. And it has to be a man. Hurry up and tell me." Lotus Sun, as it asked the question, it laughed sinisterly in its heart. "Heh, how could this king not know you're the real Lotus Sun? You could actually tell who the real one was just by smelling it. But wouldn't it be a pity not to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to tease her?" Chapter 1386. She hesitated for a long time, but couldn't say anything in the end. Her face was already red, and she felt like a steaming duck. I like Grandpa the most." Unfortunately, Loopy Toad didn't admit it. "Heh. I said, don't use relatives to brush me off." The aura unique to a divine beast spread out, and the dense spirit power mixed with the power of chaos instantly shook the ground under its feet. Sometimes, without external pressure, people would not be able to face up to their own hearts. Seeing that Loopy Toad was really going to make a move, she became even more anxious. The girl stamped her feet anxiously. She didn't want to fight Loopy Toad, so she could only tell the truth. She almost shouted, "Classmate Wang Ling is my favorite." In a flash, Loopy Toad withdrew the aura it had released. Very good." It nodded in satisfaction, then put away the phone hidden in its dog mouth and pressed the stop recording button. "Loopy Toad, you." Realizing that what she had said just now had been secretly recorded, Lotus Sun was frantic. "Don't worry, Miss Sun, this king has integrity and won't send it to anyone else." Loopy Toad promised in front of her. "Swear." Lotus Sun said anxiously with a red face. "I swear. If this king dares to say anything about what happened today, I won't be a human for the rest of my life." Loopy Toad said. At first, this curse did sound vicious enough, but after thinking about it carefully, the girl instantly felt that she was at a disadvantage. "But you're not a human to begin with. But this king also has a human form. Think about it, if I don't have a human form for the rest of my life, how bad would that be?" Loopy Toad sighed. "If I can't transform into a human form, I won't be able to smoothly fall in love with a big sister in the human world, run out at night to exercise, and then have a son and a daughter. This is tantamount to making an oath to end my family line. Isn't that vicious?" All right then, Lotus Sun was stupefied by these words. Analyzing it this way, Loopy Toad's curse was indeed vicious enough. But she still felt that it sounded a little strange. Sun Yinger knew that she had been tricked. Her Rongrong was still too young. In order not to be tricked, Sun Yinger hurriedly spoke to Loopy Toad telepathically. "Don't ask me questions that are too much. A more normal question. When we get back, I'll go to the demon realm and get you 20 sacks of meat flies." Loopy Toad raised its eyebrows at these words, and it nodded slightly to agree to the terms of the deal. "Miss over there, please briefly describe your current situation." Loopy Toad looked at Sun Yinger and asked. This question made Sun Yinger burst into tears. It was just a brief summary of his current situation. She felt that she had a lot to say. But in the end, all that was left was a single sentence. Her eyes were filled with tears and her voice sounded like she was about to cry. A teardrop unconsciously fell from the corner of her eye. "I'm a tough woman in the day, but it's hard to be a man at night." Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad, after verifying their identities, Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad went up the mountain together. Hidden in the dense forest ahead, an ancient temple gradually emerged. These bricks were made of the same material as the divine palace on Divine Tao Star, but they were clearly very old and had the faint aura of nomological laws flowing over them. The door of the temple was ajar. There were cracks on the door, as if it had been hit by something fierce. The whole temple was covered in cobwebs and dust. It was obvious that it had been abandoned for many years and no one cared about it. Where on earth did Awan go? I looked around on the way here, and there's no other entrance except for a small path halfway up the mountain. Maybe she's still waiting for us in the back secret room. Loopy Toad said, she's the world king of the divine world, so it's unlikely that anything would happen to her. Furthermore, it's obvious that this Heavenly Tao's secret room was the work of Old God. She used the Heavenly Tao magic cube to transform the original secret room inside the cube into her own secret room to record her and Tao ancestor Wang's past. There were all sorts of ways for couples to record their feelings. Using a diary to record their feelings, keeping all the photos and gifts they gave each other, writing their wishes on an old tree and tying a red rope together, and so on. This was the first time that a secret room had been modified to record their feelings. Mysterious Sea, please scan this place. Lotus Sun injected spirit energy into it, and Mysterious Sea in her hand immediately emitted a deep blue spirit light with her as the center. This spirit light turned into ripples that spread out from under Lotus Sun's feet, and in an instant, all the dust in the temple was washed away. In the blink of an eye, the temple, which had been covered in dust, was as clean as new. It actually has this kind of effect. Loopy Toad marveled in its heart. Isn't this a little overkill? Lotus Sun was a little embarrassed. No. Miss Sun is indeed a talent. She was actually able to turn a spirit sword into a wife. It looks like she'll be a good wife and mother in the future, Loopy Toad praised. Loopy Toad. I realized that after you became a divine beast, you're a little arrogant. Lotus Sun crouched down and rubbed Loopy Toad's face angrily. Can't you drink like before and be a little cuter? This king is a divine beast now, and a divine beast should have a divine beast subchild. Loopy Toad retorted. Quick, look here. At that moment, Sun Yinger on the side made a new discovery. She saw 2 palm prints at the location of the ancient temple. This is... Staring at the palm prints, Lotus Sun was very puzzled and didn't understand why they had been formed. Sun Yinger, on the other hand, had a very experienced look on her face. Judging from the width of the palm prints, it should be a man's. He's probably very tall, and the knuckles are very thin, which proves that he has a very low fat content. He should be someone with an excellent figure. He's a handsome guy. How do you know so much? Lotus Sun was astonished. Damn. This old lady has been wall-stomped by Wang Ying so many times that I'm now wall-stomping experience. One look and you can tell that these palm prints were left by a wall-stomping, and there's a high chance that Tao ancestor Wang left them when he was wall-stomping Old God. Sun Yinger analyzed forcefully. As expected, this temple is related to Old God and Tao ancestor Wang. Maybe Tao ancestor Wang confessed to Old God here back then. But just knowing this information isn't enough, said Lotus Sunday. Don't tell me I have to be wall-stomped before I can pass. Sun Yinger rubbed her chin, and then her eyes lit up as she stared at Lotus Sun and smiled maliciously. Rong Rong. Please cooperate with me. What are you doing? Wall-stomping you, of course. Don't worry, I've been wall-stomped so many times, I'm very experienced. Sun Yinger chuckled. Saying that, she grabbed Lotus Sun's wrist, raised it above her head, and slammed it into the wall. But for some reason, after Sun Yinger finished this action, she felt a chill run down her spine. That wasn't right? Why was Wang Ying's aura here? Sun Yinger instantly panicked a little. Chapter 1387. Wang Ying's aura was very strong, and Loopy Toad instantly broke out in a cold sweat. In fact, Wang Ying was the third line of protection in this operation. He had specially made this arrangement to ensure that nothing would go wrong in this operation. After receiving the order, Wang Ying merged with Loopy Toad's shadow and sneaked in. Furthermore, he had concealed himself very well along the way. Who knew that after seeing Sun Yinger push Lotus Sun against the wall, Wang Ying's emotions would start to fluctuate slightly. President Ying, you have to restrain yourself. Loopy Toad said telepathically as it did its best to pacify Wang Ying, hoping that she could calm down. If you want to deal with it, you can wait until we get out of here. These words finally calmed the restless Wang Ying down. Arms folded, he shrank into Loopy Toad's shadow and used it as cover as he quietly watched Sun Yinger's various reactions and performances. Danger. At this moment, Sun Yinger felt that there was a huge danger hanging over her head. She sensed her surroundings again and found that Wang Ying's aura had disappeared again. Was it an illusion? Or was it because he had been wall-pounded too many times that it affected her mental state, causing her aura detection system to make mistakes? Anyway, to sum it up, he was broken by Wang Ying, the gorilla. Woo woo woo. Rong rong. I think Wang Ying, this gorilla, has made me a little abnormal. You finally realized. Lotus Sun sighed and stroked Sun Yinger's little head. Also, what the hell is a gorilla? Anyway, as long as I say his life will become like this, I might as well just call him orangutan. Sun Yinger said. Lotus Sun, in fact, sometimes Lotus Sun felt that Wang Ying was also quite difficult. Sun Yinger's mouth was very carefree, which was completely different from her character. She was purely a master of obscene words. But the problem was that Ying-er was very cute. He couldn't bear to let them be so ruthless. Although Ying complained to her every day about how Wang Ying bullied her, Lotus Sun never saw any external injuries on Sun Yinger's body. The facts proved that Wang Ying looked crazy, but he was actually a man with a sense of propriety. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from the ancient temple. The wall that had Dao ancestor Wang's palm imprint on it suddenly caved in, and then split to the left and right. It really is a mechanism. There's a hidden chamber inside. Sun Yinger exclaimed. When the wall was opened, what greeted everyone's eyes was a top-secret altar hidden behind the wall. A square altar? Loopy Toad was also surprised. Square altars were rare because most altars were fused with array formations, and most of the array formations were circular. However, the altar in front of him had the four corners of the room as fulcrum points, directly framing the entire room within the altar. Engraved on the ground were mysterious ancient characters that Loopy Toad couldn't understand. Most of these mysterious ancient characters were from the god race, and only a small portion were the characters of the heavenly path. This proved that the person who set up the altar was the old god himself. This is an old god's altar, said Loopy Toad. Combining the scene in front of him, it was not difficult to deduce this conclusion. But now, a new problem was born. What was the purpose of the old god setting up this altar? In the center of the altar, Lotus Sun found a very small coffin. She stepped forward and narrowed her eyes as she examined it carefully. This was custom-made for the old god after he regained his youth? If it was just to build a coffin for himself, why would he go through so much effort to build such an altar? Said Loopy Toad. Wherever there was an altar, there was usually a purpose behind it. At the moment, they didn't have enough evidence, so for the time being, they couldn't conclude that this was the old god's plot. But based on experience and intuition, Loopy Toad felt that the existence of this altar definitely wasn't a good thing. At that moment, a chilly wind blew in the secret chamber with a bone-chilling coldness. Accompanied by the sound of a woman sobbing, the coffin in front of Loopy Toad opened with a bang. It was the skeleton of a baby, but it was missing a right arm. The bones of the old god? Loopy Toad looked a little hesitant. Why would a deceased world king of the old god world emit such a powerful malicious ghost aura? This sudden chilly wind was permeated with a powerful oppressive force and energy, and also contained a kind of godly power. Although it was very faint, Loopy Toad could sense it. Then, the altar glowed, and a phantom figure with closed eyes emerged from the center of the altar. Awan? The sudden appearance of the phantom stunned everyone. Lotus Sun was sure that she wasn't seeing things. This was Miss Awan's soul. In the coffin, the old god's remains in the shape of a baby trembled slightly. Awan's soul merged with the remains and finally turned into a little girl in a red dress and black leather shoes. This was the old god's little girl form, which everyone had seen in the previous picture scroll. I've been waiting for this day. The little girl spoke, but it was extremely old and clearly wasn't Awan's voice. You're the old god? Lotus Sun looked ahead warily. She couldn't believe that Awan had actually been attacked after they separated. What did you do to Awan? I've waited for many years without choosing the next successor of the old god world, all for this day. The little girl said, there's no one more suitable than Awan. She is an ageless soul. As long as she is old enough, she can merge with my infant remains. Theoretically, I can be restored to the appearance of 16 or 17 years old, and my appearance will be forever fixed at that time. But you seem a little impatient. Loopy Toad looked at the little girl in front of it. The old goddess of the deity world, the previous world king of the deity world, her aura was extremely terrifying. This was the first time Loopy Toad had felt Myriad Wings God's aura. It was indeed ridiculously strong. That's right. Awan is still too young now. If she can grow up to be a mature woman and merge with me, that might be what I want. He smiled calmly. But Tao Ancestor Wang doesn't mind your appearance. Even in your old age. From the very beginning, she had been envious of this kind of love, and at the same time, she admired Tao Ancestor Wang very much. He doesn't mind, but I do. The old god said, no woman can endure her old age. I can endure the pain of having to part with the person I love after regaining my youth. But Tao Ancestor has a way. Lotus Sun said. There's nothing he can do. Don't think you know everything. A man's words can never be trusted. The old god was very unhappy. In order to make the deity world a better place, I can only sacrifice Awan. There's nothing I can do about it. It's nothing but grandiose hypocritical talk. Lotus Sun frowned. Tao Ancestor Wang actually likes you. That might be the biggest stain in his life. Saying this, she gripped Mysterious Sea tightly, her body trembling with anger. What? You still want to fight me? A foundation establishment cultivator? The old god smiled. Hand over Miss Awan. The next moment, she pulled out Mysterious Sea and pointed the blade at the old god. Otherwise, even if you are a god, I will kill you. Otherwise, even if you're a god, I won't be polite. Sword Chi mixed with the heavenly Tao magic cube and the power of primal chaos whistled out. The old god's shoulders sank on the spot. Impossible, the old god looked up, astonishment written all over his face. Chapter 1388. There was no way a normal foundation establishment cultivator could unleash such sword chi. Calm Goddess looked warily at the girl in front of her, and saw the phantom sword spirit hiding behind Lotus Sunday. After the upgrade, Mysterious Sea was dressed in a gorgeous dark blue evening dress. His sapphire-like eyes gave off a deep feeling as if they were thousands of kilometers under the sea, and his silver-gray hair hung down in beautiful curls like the waves. Inadvertently, a faintly discernible and invisible pressure spread out, mingling with Lotus Sun's aura. One with the sword, there was no distinction between them at this moment. Mysterious Sea's bond with Lotus Sun was too deep. This was the spirit sword that Lotus Sun had been using since she was a child. After a long period of companionship, coupled with Mysterious Sea's gratitude to the sword master after his upgrade, the bond between the two deepened, forming a passive one with the sword. Lotus Sun only needed to pull out the spirit sword, and Mysterious Sea's aura would automatically merge with her. Calm Goddess looked at this scene in astonishment. At that moment, she finally knew what the problem was. You actually fused one of the heavenly Tao magic cubes into your spirit sword? This operation directly scared the old goddess silly. She knew how precious the heavenly Tao magic cube was. What an audacious human. On the altar, the little girl stood calmly on a high platform. Floating in the air, she gazed down at Lotus Sunday. Do you know what will happen if the Rubik's Cube loses balance? The next moment, a brilliant golden halo lit up above her head, releasing an immortal aura. This was Myriad Wings God's unique divine halo, and it possessed formidable godly power. After deducing and combining the memories in Awan's soul, the old goddess knew what had happened before she was officially resurrected. The unspeakable land had been destroyed. One of the 9 heavenly Tao magic cubes had been stolen, which directly caused the other 8 cubes to go out of control at any time. The one that Tao ancestor Wang had given her back then had already gone out of control. No wonder she had vaguely sensed that something was wrong on Divine Tao's star after her resurrection. Everything made sense now. No wonder Awan had entered the secret room of the heavenly Tao magic cubes so much earlier than she had speculated. Who would have thought that it was actually because the magic cube had lost balance, and Awan had brought a Foundation establishment human here to retrieve the cube. This action disrupted the old god's plan to absorb Awan's ageless soul. In addition, she had long been unable to restrain the impulse in her heart. Therefore, even though he knew that the time was much earlier than the estimated time, he still did not dare to act rashly. The old god still chose to attack and devour Awan's soul. We didn't know this would happen, so now we need to collect the cubes one by one and replace them with new ones, Lotus Sun replied. New Rubik's Cube. The old god laughed again. You say I'm hypocritical, but you're even more hypocritical than me. Back then, the Tao ancestor had spent countless years creating a Rubik's Cube. Do you think that this heavenly Tao magic cube is made of mud? Do you think you can make it so easily? The next moment. Wang. The surrounding space collapsed, and the myriad-winged divine ring above the old god's head burst into a brilliant light. Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad saw the scene in front of them instantly change. When they came back to their senses, they were astonishingly in a bright world. Divine clouds coiled under their feet and runes swirled around them. The old god in the form of a little girl sat cross-legged in front of them, as huge as a mountain. She looked like an eternally motionless deity who exuded a dignified aura. If it wasn't for the fact that her red dress and black leather shoes were too dramatic, everyone would have turned pale at this scene. Inner world. Loopy Toad frowned. This clearly wasn't an ordinary inner world, because the energy flowing in it was too enormous. Don't think that you're the only one who has the heavenly Tao magic cube. Tao ancestor gave me a token of love, and I've already fused part of its power into my inner world. The old god's ethereal voice came from all directions. You're a mere Foundation establishment cultivator. Even if you use the spirit sword in your hand, how much can you do? The old god in the form of a little girl couldn't help laughing. It was taboo to be dragged into the inner world in the middle of a battle. In the inner world, the master of the inner world was the god here. What was more, she herself was a god. With one finger, you'll be reduced to ashes. Do you have any last words? The old god said in a low voice. She sat cross-legged in this world full of light, and her powerful aura soared. This was the first time that Lotus Sun had faced an opponent the size of a mountain. Anyone would tremble at the huge disparity in size. But she recalled that when the gate between worlds had descended back then, Audjua had also faced a demon king the size of a mountain. She already knew that Audjua had won by doing nothing. But at that time, he had still charged forward without any regard for his own safety. He had clearly known that there was a huge disparity in strength, but he had still done it without hesitation. And this was also why Wang Ling had chosen Audjua back then. Not everyone who was weak couldn't become a hero. As long as their hearts were strong enough, no matter how weak they were still heroes. In that instant, Lotus Sun's thoughts were a million thoughts. What the predecessors had seen, and now, the power that Wang Ling had bestowed upon her. It gave her great confidence in that moment. The moment she held Mysterious Sea, she suddenly felt countless people pushing her forward from behind. It's not certain who'll be reduced to ashes. The next moment, the girl rose from the ground with Mysterious Sea's sword chi. Under Lotus Sun's feet, Mysterious Sea's sword chi turned into 2 jets that allowed her to fly freely in the air. She aimed the tip of Mysterious Sea's sword chi at the huge old god in front of her, and she turned into a brilliant azure meteor as she charged forward recklessly. You overestimate yourself. Old God snorted and opened his divine eyes. 2 beams of light shot out of his pupils like 2 dragons. They merged in the air to form a huge dragon, which swiftly crashed in Lotus Sun's direction with boundless godly might. This was Old God's boundless godly light. After incorporating part of the heavenly Tao magic cube's power, this was equivalent to an attack from a Tao god. In the end, she's Tao ancestor Wang's old flame. She's indeed terrifying. Lotus Sun's sword is so powerful that I'm afraid she's no match for him. Loopy Toad was horrified. It looked up at this scene from below and assessed the battle situation at the same time. When Lotus Sun had leapt up just now, Loopy Toad had already wrapped some of the power of chaos around Mysterious Sea to secretly help her kill Old God in one blow. But now it seemed that Old God's power was too fierce, and Loopy Toad's strength alone was far from enough. No hurry. Wang Ying frowned. He had come to make sure that the situation was foolproof. His analysis of Old God's battle strength was also more accurate. Although Lotus Sun's attack wasn't enough to kill Old God in one blow, it was still enough to shatter this boundless godly light and teach him a lesson. Because Old God had been too careless, he hadn't used his full strength. Rip. Sure enough, everything was as Wang Ying had expected. The azure streak of light that Lotus Sun had turned into tore Old God's boundless godly light to shreds like a sharp blade. She was extremely fast, and still moving at a high speed, she shot toward Old God. Old God couldn't dodge in time, and Lotus Sun directly cut off a piece of his scalp. The cross-section was as smooth as a mirror, and could even reflect light. Chapter 1389. Lotus Sun had directly shaved off a piece of Old God's head to form a physical version of the Mediterranean Sea. Moreover, Mysterious Sea had played a trick by covering her sword chi with the power of the Dead Sea. This was originally an ability similar to the serious injury effect, which could block the recovery. But now that the sword chi had shaved off Old God's scalp, Old God wouldn't be able to recover her hair in the short term. She could only fight Lotus Sun with a bald head. Old God trembled with rage as she watched a chunk of her hair fall off. Her mountainous body shook violently in the inner world, causing the whole world to rumble. "I'll kill you." Infuriating Old God's face was naturally an extremely terrifying thing. Old God shrunk her body, and her expression turned serious. The 10,000 wings divine ring above her head charged at Lotus Sun with matchless divine might. Old God spread her golden wings, which exuded powerful godly might. Why isn't it 10,000 wings? Loopy Toad was surprised. They're one. If I directly spread them, they'll be like sails with too much air resistance. Even Old God probably won't be able to fly, Wang Ying replied. This answer was so scientific that Loopy Toad couldn't refute it. At that moment, Old God, whose scalp had been shaved off, was furious. As the golden wings trembled, starlight formed on the horizon and huge meteorites fell one after another. Lotus Sun held Mysterious Sea in her hand, and sword chi of the boundless ocean rampaged through the falling meteorites, shattering them one by one. I'm going to make you realize the reality that you can never go against God. The next moment, divine light burst forth from Old God's red clothes, and starlight gathered under her feet. Together with the endless drifting golden divine feathers, it turned into a star carpet which was laid out under her feet. This was a kind of transcendent power that indeed only a god could do. She didn't speak as she walked on the red carpet, but divine light surged in her eyes as powerful fluctuations built up in them. You will fall in this galaxy. The next moment, Old God raised her hand. With a flip of her hand, the star carpet under her feet instantly flipped over, and countless stars poured down. In a flash, the entire inner world was covered in a shower of meteorites. Hundreds of thousands of stars appeared and crashed down like a dense hailstorm. She actually turned the divine feathers into stars. Loopy Toad's eyes were filled with shock. This change was not a trick, but a real change. Theoretically, the will of God could change everything. God was almost omnipotent. Lotus Sun's expression was solemn. She jumped onto a meteor and used Mysterious Sea's sword chi to block the attack. However, the density of these meteors was simply too high. Now, it had reached the point where he had no choice but to use his ultimate move to clear the area. City-toppling sword. Lotus Sun pointed to the sky and unleashed her most powerful sword technique. A 10,000-meter-long sword chi instantly formed under the astonished gaze of the old god. The sword intent of the raging sea mixed with the tsunami echo of the heavenly Tao bell made the light of the entire core world even more dazzling. Mysterious Sea's body suddenly expanded, and she looked like a female giant. The power accumulated by the tens of thousands of doppelgangers caused Mysterious Sea's sword chi to truly turn into a vast ocean, colliding with the starry river that was pouring down. F***K, this is actually a freaking battle between Foundation establishment cultivators. Loopy Toad was stupefied. It had been pressed underground the entire time in the cultivation's secret land on Back Mountain and had almost become dog jerky, so it had no idea what was going on outside. Now that it saw this scene with its own eyes, its mouth felt like it had been dislocated and it couldn't close it. Rumble, the powerful city-toppling sword collided with the starry river with the power of the ocean, swallowing up all the falling meteors and then crushing them to pieces in the ocean. At that moment, Old God looked down with a very complicated expression. A Foundation establishment cultivator actually had the ability to resist the power of a god. This was undoubtedly a provocation. But the old god could also clearly sense the true battle prowess in Lotus Sun's body. This city-toppling sword had frightened her and actually caused her mind to fluctuate. The 10,000-meter-long sword chi practically crushed the starry river she had summoned in two and dissolved all her godly power. Old God flapped his golden wings and swiftly retreated. She crossed her arms in front of her, and the 10,000-meter-long sword chi crashed into her crossed arms. The sword sent Old God flying to the end of the core world and crashing into the wall of the void. This sword was too terrifying. It had almost pierced a hole in the core world and even pulled her, the master of the core world, out, but Old God was Old God. Her combat experience was far beyond Lotus Sun's. For a Foundation establishment cultivator to be able to unleash such a powerful sword strike, she must have been accumulating power in her spare time. Thus, she was sure that Lotus Sun couldn't unleash such a powerful killing move in a row. And in fact, this was indeed the case. The city-toppling sword took 12 hours to charge up. Lotus Sun could charge up to 10 strikes, but it hadn't been that long since she had last used it. I'm very curious. How many more strikes can you unleash? Old God smiled. She knew that her chance had come. Rong. Retreat. This woman is going to go big. Sun Yinger realized that the situation wasn't good, and hurriedly pulled Lotus Sun back. She sensed the killing intent in Old God's eyes and felt that the situation wasn't good, so she immediately sprinted 10,000 meters with Lotus Sun in her arms, even using the distance shrinking technique to keep her distance. Want to leave? Old God shook her head slightly. This was her core world, and no one could escape. He merely crooked his finger. Sun Yinger, who had already slipped far away, was once again brought back to a place not far from the calm goddess. In the inner world, the owner of the inner world could limit the range of battle, and no one could escape. Give this to them. At this moment, Wang Ying finally decided to take action. However, it wasn't a real attack. Instead, it was just a tool to assist him. Huddled in Loopy Toad's shadow, he stretched out his hand and put something in Loopy Toad's mouth. This is... Loopy Toad was startled. A power bank enchanted by the Lord, Wang Ying replied. Loopy Toad, the situation was so urgent that Loopy Toad didn't have time to think. With the power bank in its tongue, it instantly stretched out in Lotus Sun's direction. Miss Lotus Sun, catch. This is a power bank that the commander gave you. Charger, power bank? Lotus Sun thought she had misheard. In the end, a power bank was delivered to her. With Loopy Toad's tip, Lotus Sun smoothly found the charging port on the hilt of the Mysterious Sea sword, and it was a Type-C port. This was something that had existed after upgrading the Mysterious Sea. The monk didn't say anything, and even Lotus Sun herself didn't realize it. Because the location was very well hidden. Furthermore, who the hell knew that there was a charging port on the hilt? How much sword chi can a mere power bank give you? Old God smiled again. Lotus Sun connected the power bank. In the next moment, she felt Mysterious Sea's sword chi fill up at a terrifying speed. Then, Lotus Sun raised the sword again and swung it at Old God. Alluring sword. Alluring sword. An alluring sword. At that moment, Mysterious Sea, who felt the strength in his body gradually fill up, turned his gaze to Lotus Sun and asked gently, "Sword Master, this is too troublesome. Do I need to use 10 swords at once?" Lotus Sun covered her mouth with an astonished expression. Can classmate Wang Ling's power bank recharge so many swords? Indeed. Mysterious Sea nodded. But the sword spirit space is limited, and I can only use 10 swords at once. Based on the total amount of energy this power bank can provide, it can provide 10,000 rounds of sword chi in total. Question mark. Hearing this, Old God was so shocked that his feathers stood on end. What the hell, was this a nuclear power bank? Chapter 1390. The overturning sword caught the Old God off guard, and caught her off guard. She had almost been sucked out of the inner world earlier. And the power of 10 consecutive overturning swords was unstoppable. What was more, this wasn't the first time. Mysterious Sea fired 10 consecutive overturning swords, which was 10 consecutive overturning swords. Under this attack, which sounded like a Russian doll trap, cracks appeared in the Old God's inner world. The whole world shook, and all the space walls around them shattered. In this situation, it looked like the Old God was powerless to resist. Hands on her hips, Sun Yinger had a proud expression on her face. "So what if you're the Old God? My Rongrong is Ling Zhenren's woman." Ling Zhenren? The Old God searched through her memories. She realized that she didn't have this person in mind. Logically speaking, if it was someone Awan knew, after she swallowed Awan's soul, she should have also obtained Awan's memories. In the end, the Old God's mind was blank. She seemed to know, but also didn't. This was the effect of the Great Shielding Spell. After all, the Old God had never met Wang Ling, so it was useless even if she swallowed Awan's soul and obtained his memories. If she had known earlier what kind of player was standing behind the person she was facing, given the Old God's intelligence, she would never have dared to put on airs and court death like this. So sometimes, being stupid was one thing. Not having a clear understanding of one's own abilities was another. The 100 overturning swords in front of her made the Old God feel powerless to reverse the situation. She kept retreating, and the sword chi cut open several more wounds on her already bald head, from which blood trickled down. At this most critical moment, the Old God took out her other magic treasure. It was a golden holy shield. Although it was golden, it was made of godly wood. A golden Holy Spirit shield. It was one of the Old God's most powerful world-defying magic treasures. Furthermore, this Holy Spirit shield was one of the gifts that Tao ancestor Wang had given her back then. It was a +2 world-defying magic treasure. It came with 20% power of primal chaos. Boom! When the 100 overturning swords piled together, it actually gave off the aura of the domain of the gods and the spirit sea. The air in front of her was drowned in a deep blue glow, and before she could see it clearly, the surging sword chi was already upon her. Ha! They were all women. Don't think that you're the only one with support. The one standing behind this old mother is Tao ancestor Wang. She raised the shield of the Holy Spirit high up. When she took out this magic tool, her confidence seemed to have increased a lot. Although Old God had lost the upper hand and became very passive, the existence of the Holy Spirit shield seemed to have changed the whole situation. Wang Long. A resplendent golden light erupted from the shield of the Holy Spirit, illuminating the surroundings and burning the 9 heavens. A powerful aura of the great Tao emanated from it. For a moment, the entire world was filled with thousands of Dharma images, and all kinds of living beings appeared. Light elephant, light python, light lion, light leopard, light Pikachu, each of these living beings was as big as a mountain. They rushed forward and blocked the swords for the Old God, blocking all the hundreds of devastatingly beautiful swords. Mysterious Sea's sword chi clashed with the Holy Spirit shield's golden light and the creature's image, causing the sky to explode with dense fog, covering everything. Lotus Sun cleaved the fog in front of her in two, but saw Old God holding up the shield of the Holy Spirit with a smug smile on his face. With Tao Ancestor Wang's shield of the Holy Spirit here, do you really think you can cleave it in two? Old God smiled. This was a +2 world-defying magic tool, fused with 20% of the power of primal chaos. It was rare in the world. And most importantly, Tao Ancestor Wang had given her more than just the shield of the Holy Spirit. She hadn't had the chance to take out other magic tools, but they were just as useful. But Old God hadn't expected that he would use the shield of the Holy Spirit for the first time in his life, and it would actually be to deal with a little Foundation establishment girl. In the sky, Lotus Sun pursed her lips. She didn't want to argue with Old God. There was no point, and no result. In front of her, Old God seemed more like a woman who had fallen out of favor. Because only when one fell out of favor would one develop such a strong competitive mentality. Lotus Sun disdained to compare herself with Old God, because there was no need. But Old God didn't think so. I don't care who the person behind you is. No matter how strong that person is, can he be stronger than Tao Ancestor? Back then, Tao Ancestor only doted on me and gave me so many treasures. Old God sneered. I admit that I underestimated you. You, a Foundation establishment cultivator, being able to force me to take out the shield of the Holy Spirit is unprecedented. In the face of the overbearing Old God, Lotus Sun still maintained the dignified posture of a well-bred lady. Even Old God's provocative words didn't cause the girl's expression to fluctuate in the slightest. Because she knew very well that whatever she didn't want to say, Sun Yinger would definitely say it. Who knew that while she was a well-bred lady, Shadow was an expert at shooting her mouth off? Sure enough, Sun Yinger couldn't take it anymore. She suddenly put her hands on her hips and attacked Old God. Blah, blah, blah. You old woman. You keep saying that men are all bad things, and you're still using the thing Tao Ancestor Wang gave you. What a waste of his infatuation for you, and you. Regarding his suspicions, in the words of the present, he was just a green tea. Do gods also have green tea? Gods were not supposed to get angry. But now, Old God had actually already lost his mind a little. Women couldn't be compared with each other. The girl in front of her was clearly only at the Foundation establishment stage, but she had the battle strength to contend with Old God. This was enough to prove how much effort the person behind her had spent on her. Wang Ling had actually just helped Lotus Sun increase her battle strength in passing. It couldn't really be considered a lot of effort. But there was nothing he could do, that was what Old God thought. Now that Tao Ancestor Wang's whereabouts were unknown, Old God indeed felt like an old woman who had fallen out of favor. Lotus Sun's existence made her feel jealous. And this jealousy would turn into anger toward Lotus Sunday. If you want to kill me, break my shield of the Holy Spirit first, Old God said softly with narrowed eyes in the air at that moment. She sat cross-legged on a divine cloud and raised the shield of the Holy Spirit. All kinds of golden creatures surged out from all directions, surrounding her tightly. This shield of the Holy Spirit is hard to deal with. It can even block the sword chi of 100 city-toppling swords. It's a good idea to use numbers in a situation where there isn't enough power. Unfortunately, with just Mysterious C's power as a sword spirit, even if he unleashes 10 swords at once, it still won't be fast enough. Loopy Toad watched with worry. In Mysterious C's full energy form, the power of 10 consecutive swords still wouldn't be enough to knock Old God down. It looked at Wang Ying, hinting for her to make a move. But Wang Ying still didn't move. Although this was just Old God, in Wang Ying's opinion, she could kill him with a flip of her hand. Lord Ling didn't need to do anything at all. He could do it as a shadow. But this was a rare opportunity to gain experience. If he made a move, the battle would be over, which would be bad for both Lotus Sun and Ying. Both of them lacked combat experience, and at the same time, they lacked the tacit understanding to cooperate with each other. Thus, this was an excellent opportunity for them to improve. Fighting an expert would undoubtedly give them a huge boost in experience. Fighting hundreds or even thousands of battles with cultivators of the same realm might not be as effective as this one. Indeed, in Wang Ling and Wang Ying's eyes, Old God wasn't an expert. Perhaps Miss Sun can think of a way, Wang Ying said. In a situation where one's combat strength was at the same level, one had to know how to use their techniques flexibly and throw themselves back into the fight. This was one of the skills and experiences of advanced combat. Can you split other things with your splitting ability? Yes. I just need to add my splitting nomological power to it. But my strength is now being restricted by Gorilla Wang Ying. Sun Yinger had just said this when she suddenly had a surprised expression on her face. Why do I suddenly feel like my strength has returned? She was extremely astonished. Because right after she finished complaining, the power that had been restricted by Wang Ying actually returned in an instant. This caused Sun Yinger to feel terrified in her heart. Good. Now work with me, we'll break her shield. Splitting Mysterious Sea externally. This was her battle plan. Monk Golden Lamp had set up the splitting nomological power inside the sword spirit space mainly so that Mysterious Sea could recharge itself through its split body. And now, the charging problem inside had already been solved with the power bank that Wang Ling had provided. Then, as long as the external split was completed, a fully charged Mysterious Sea would continuously split and replicate. In theory, it would be possible to produce a large amount of sword chi in a very short period of time. One Mysterious Sea could release 10 swords in a row in one go. Then 10 Mysterious Seas. That was 1,000 swords. 100 Mysterious Seas, that was 10,000 swords. Even if Old God had the shield of Holy Spirit. Under the absolute number of 10,000 swords, it would be difficult for him to resist. Frowning, Lotus Sun became even more serious. The boundless ocean behind her surged with the power of an extremely powerful moon finger. The two women communicated in secret. At that moment, Sun Yinger also started to exert force. She slapped the splitting nomological power at the back of the Mysterious Sea. For a moment, countless Mysterious Seas that were saturated with energy started to split. 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. More and more Mysterious Seas appeared behind her like an army. You want to play this game with me? It could only be said that Old God was indeed Old God. She immediately sensed Lotus Sun's countermeasure. With a wave of her hand, she took out a jade horsetail whisk. This was the Myriad Realm horsetail whisk, which was also a gift from Tao ancestor Wang. It could gather the dust of heaven and earth, making each grain as heavy as a mountain. It was the best way to restrict the Mysterious Seas from splitting. But just as she was about to wave the horsetail whisk, countless Sun Yinger in front of her turned into black shadows and attacked her in an attempt to stop her. Get out of the way. Old God shouted and had no choice but to wave the horsetail whisk to drive away these Sun Yinger splits. With me here, don't even think about stopping Rong Rong. Sun Yinger snorted, and the countless splits attacked Old God from all directions like missiles. The moment they got close to Old God, they immediately exploded in a standard suicide attack. Old God had no choice but to wave the horsetail whisk to drive them away. This was a diversion tactic. By the time Old God reacted, it was already too late to stop the Mysterious Seas from splitting. The splitting of the Mysterious Seas had already become a major trend, and it was no longer something she could solve with her horsetail whisk. There were 1,000 Mysterious Seas. They burst forth with powerful boundless ocean chi. These auras superimposed to form the virtual image of a divine sea whale in the air. It's actually so powerful that it can form a virtual whale. Loopy Toad was shocked. This was a phenomenon that could only be formed when a water-type spirit sword was powerful enough. The power of a whale's fall was a symbol of the ocean nurturing and accommodating all things. At that moment, Lotus Sun stood in front of 1,000 Mysterious Seas that were saturated with energy. The huge divine sea whale was entrenched at her feet, and as it swung its tail, a tsunami surged and released terrifying fluctuations. At this moment, she was like a female general. The azure blue dress that Awan had given her was like a battle armor. The wind howled, the sword chi and the sound of the wind interweaved, playing a heroic battle song of a woman. Mysterious seas, heed my command. Lotus Sun shouted. Here, Sword Master. The 1,000 mysterious seas replied in unison. Kill. In the next moment, the girl pointed to the sky and waved the spirit sword in her hand. Chi. Facing Old God, she slashed forward. 10,000 sword chi shot out at the same time and slashed forward. Oh no. Old God knew that things weren't looking good. These 10,000 sword chi were too turbulent. Before they could even get close, the sword wind that was strong enough to cut through space had already twisted her face. This sword chi was so strong that it could be said to be unprecedented. The auras of 10,000 city-toppling swords overlapped, and the sword chi had an armor-piercing effect as it directly penetrated her Holy Spirit shield. Not only did it instantly destroy the golden light beasts around her, it also shook her so much that she coughed up blood repeatedly. Blood dripped from the corners of Old God's mouth and mixed with the red clothes he was wearing, making it impossible to distinguish the color at all. Realizing that the situation wasn't good, Old God still decided to flee. Retreat. There was no doubt that this was an incomparably humiliating choice for a god. She had actually been forced to flee in panic by a Foundation establishment cultivator. But for Old God, there was already no other way. She had already made up her mind. Once she successfully retreated, she would detonate the entire Heavenly Tao magic cube and blow up Divine Tao Star. This Lotus Sun couldn't be left alive. Even if she had to pay the price of the entire Divine Tao Star, she had to be completely destroyed. However, just as Old God was about to abandon the inner world and flee, an incomparably dazzling golden light fell from the sky. What is this? Old God was stupefied. Enveloped by this golden light, she couldn't move at all. This is young Master Ling's stand at attention and take a beating spell. Loopy Toad recognized the origin of this spell. It was a branch of the great immobilizing spell. Those hit by the spell would be frozen in place and unable to move as they faced the full brunt of the attack. Even though I was sent here, Lord Ling still couldn't help making a move. Sure enough, this man is spying on everything. Wang Ying smiled bitterly. Everything was over. In the sky, Old God was completely immobilized by the stand at attention and take a beating spell. She had to face the impact of Lotus Sun's 10,000 sword chi head-on. The scene in front of her was like the end of the universe. The 10,000 sword chi smashed her inner world to pieces, and there were holes and storms everywhere. I'm Tao Ancestor Wan's woman. You dare touch me? Old God's face was full of fear. If you kill me, Wan will die too. Don't you understand? At that moment, Sun Yinger chuckled. The man behind my Rongrong is omnipotent. Boom! Sword energy surged and smashed into the Old God. Everything there exploded and broke into pieces. Then, the entire inner world started to collapse. The power of chaos in the universe seeped in through the cracks and mingled with the sword chi, and everything in the world wailed. Sun Yinger's words. They were also the last words Old God heard before she was cut to pieces by the 10,000 sword chi. Chapter 1391. When Old Goddess disappeared, her iconic red dress disappeared along with the pair of golden wings. Even the 10,000-winged divine ring on her head fell off. After the destruction of the inner world, Lotus Sun and the others reappeared in the Temple of Freedom, and she picked up the 10,000-winged divine ring that had fallen to the ground. For a moment, all the secret rooms in the Heavenly Tao magic cube started to shake as if they had been stimulated. The space walls on all sides started to compress in the center, and they were about to shrink into a ball. Loopy Toad could clearly sense a powerful resentment at work. It's Old Goddess. This woman is using her remnant thoughts to activate the magic cube, intending to blow us all up inside. Ah. Then what should we do? Sun Yinger had no clue what to do, and could only cry with Lotus Sunday, boo-hoo. Rong. I hope I'll still be your shadow in my next life. Stupiding, don't say your last words so early, Lotus Sun was very calm as she looked at Loopy Toad. If Bossing is here, he'll have a way, right? Wang Ying had been cooped up in Loopy Toad's shadow for a long time. At that moment, he finally emerged and asked with a smile, "When did you find me?" "When Er's strength returned, I was already sure that you were with us," Lotus Sun said. She looked at Wang Ying. "Can you take us out?" "Of course," Wang Ying said confidently, and then looked at Sun Yinger. "Unfortunately, you can't be Miss Sun's shadow in her next life. Besides, I heard all the bad things you said about me before. I'll settle the score with you after we get out." Sun Yinger, Wang Ying had already prepared an escape route, which was why Wang Ling had sent him here. Thus, there was no need to find the exit of any secret room at all. This mere Heavenly Tao's secret room couldn't trap people like Wang Ling and Wang Ying. Then, a pitch-black passage opened in front of them. What a pity that the Heavenly Tao's secret room was compressed, and all the good things in it were destroyed, Loopy Toad said regretfully. "That counts as good?" Wang Ying couldn't help laughing. To be exact, he thought that in old goddess's eyes, these things might be good things. But whether it was Wang Ling or Wang Ying himself, they were worthless. When women became ruthless, they were indeed terrifying. He had actually thought of using the Heavenly Tao chamber that he had painstakingly modified to commemorate his relationship with Tao ancestor Wang to bury another woman that he was jealous of. One could only say that Tao ancestor Wang had made a mistake. Secondly, the old man still didn't have a clear understanding of himself. If this old god knew that Lotus Sun was safe and sound, he would probably die with everlasting regret, right? After leaving the secret room of the Heavenly Tao magic cube, Lotus Sun stood next to the sinkhole on Divine Tao Star and gazed into the abyss below. A glittering magic cube floated up from the bottom of the abyss. To her astonishment, the Rubik's Cube actually fused with the mysterious sea in her hand. "Congratulations, Miss Sunday. Your mysterious sea is now a dual-core spirit sword. Aren't we going to hold the upgrade ceremony?" Lotus Sun was surprised. She had heard from the monk that the dual-core mysterious sea could unleash the power of the overturning the world sword. The might of one sword was equivalent to 100 city-toppling swords. The heavens tesseract will attract and resonate with each other. The upgrade ritual only needs to be carried out once, and it will be used to fuse mysterious sea with the first heavens tesseract, Wang Ying replied. He gazed at the twin mysterious sea in Lotus Sun's hand and sensed the powerful battle prowess it exuded. The power of Lotus Sun's sword was now comparable to that of a Tao god. There was probably no one below the Tao god level who could withstand this kind of sword power. "I took another Rubik's Cube. What should we do about the hole in it?" Lotus Sun was worried. "I naturally have a way to deal with that." After saying that, Wang Ying took out a brand new Heavenly Tao Tesseract from his sleeve. This cube was golden in color. It was the same color as fresh crispy noodle snacks. "Just replace it with a new one," Wang Ying said. "This was prepared from the beginning?" "No, it's fresh out of the oven." "It's fresh out of the oven. Your Excellency just pinched it." "It's not difficult to make, but it's more difficult to collect the materials." Wang Ying said. Monk Jin Dang was in charge of collecting the materials, and it took him a day to collect the materials for 2 Rubik's Tesseract. After receiving the materials, Lord instantly needed 2. One was used to fill the hole in the unspeakable land, and now this one is used to repair Divine Tao Star. After saying that, he threw the golden Heavenly Tao Tesseract into the pit below. In the blink of an eye, the bottom of the abyss, which had been buried in endless darkness, shone brilliantly. Like a sweet spring, the dazzling light of restoration gushed out from the depths of the abyss to mend the hole in the sky pit. The sky pit was rapidly being filled up at a speed visible to the naked eye, and in less than a minute, it was completely repaired. Even the buildings that had been swallowed up by the sky pit were completely restored. "So, will the Heavenly Tao Tesseract's imbalance be stopped?" Loopy Toad asked at that moment. "It's just that it won't happen for the time being. There are currently 9 Heavenly Tao Tesseracts, so keeping each other in check isn't a problem. But the new Rubik's Tesseract is too powerful, and it's definitely not a long-term solution." so if we want to replace it, we'll have to replace the remaining 7. Wang Ying said as he looked at Lotus Sunday. From today on, Miss Sun's job every night is to replace the Rubik's Tesseract. Now that you have dual mysterious C cores, your battle strength has increased significantly. With Immerse to protect you, it's good to use this opportunity to go out and gain experience. I'll do my best, Lotus Sun said. Wang Ying noticed that the girl didn't look as happy as he had imagined. Is Miss Sun worried about Awan? Her soul has been swallowed by Old God. Can classmate Wang Ling do anything? Actually, there's no need for Lord Ling to do anything. Wang Ying shook his head and smiled. That Qing Tong cat in the forsaken land of the gods was already one of them. It wouldn't be difficult at all for him to say hello and capture Awan's soul. As for the soul that had been swallowed by Old God, it actually wasn't Awan's complete soul. The Qing Tong cat had deliberately split it up for Old God. After Awan's soul had been split up, the Qing Tong cat had swiftly used its magic power to repair it. Repairing souls was also one of the abilities of the pillar spirit of the divine pillar. At that moment, Lotus Sun suddenly felt the myriad wings god ring on her wrist tremble slightly. The curly-haired girl was like a kitten that had poked its head out of a coffee cup, and she abruptly poked her head out of the divine ring. Nah. I'm back. Awan. Lotus Sun was pleasantly surprised. I think I'm a little stuck, wait for Awan. Lotus Sun cupped Awan's face, then handed the divine ring to Sun Yinger. Help me. Let's pull Awan out together. 1, 2, 3. Harder. The two girls worked together, and with a slurp, the curly-haired girl was pulled out of the narrow divine ring. Old God's divine ring is too small. Awan rubbed her chest. This was where she had been stuck just now. Pulling it out by force had rubbed against her chest. Sun Yinger smiled evilly. I didn't expect Awan to be so big despite her young age. I heard from Old God that you're an ageless soul and will never age. Aren't you the legendary legal Lolita? Ageless souls aren't as good as I thought. I don't know why Old God is so obsessed with this. Awan sighed. With that, she bowed deeply to the crowd. This time, thank you all for your help. Awan, you're welcome. The person you should really thank is classmate Wang Ling. Lotus Sun smiled. I'll never forget Ling Zhenren's kindness. I'll definitely repay it. After saying that, Awan looked up at Lotus Sunday, and don't worry, Rong, I'm not talking about repaying you with my body. What does it have to do with me? Lotus Sun's face started to heat up again. Although she had been teased time and again these days, it seemed that she still hadn't gotten used to this kind of teasing. It was really too hard to fall in love with a blockhead. At that moment, Awan said to Wang Ying, her eyes twinkling cutely. Your Excellency Wang Ying, you and Immortal Toad can go back first. I have something to give to Rong. Okay. It's getting late. No. 60 High School will resume classes tomorrow. I hope Miss Sun will come back soon, Wang Ying said. I know. Lotus Sun nodded. Wang Ying deliberately reminded her of the time for a reason. It was now past 5:00 on a Sunday afternoon. There were less than 3 hours to go before the reduced time of 8:00 every night. As soon as Lotus Sun returned to Earth, Sun Yinger would immediately report to him according to their agreement. She actually called him a gorilla. Then let this guy see how big a gorilla's chest muscles were. Before leaving, Wang Ying swept Sun Yinger a glance. Sun Yinger shivered, and there was a feeling of death overflowing between her eyebrows. In a quiet room in the Divine Palace, Awan showed Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger some of the things she had collected over the years. There were magic treasures, elixirs, and some beautiful clothes. These things were like treasures, and each of them shone brightly. Some were rare treasures that Awan had obtained from her training, while others had been inherited from the old god. Now that the old god was dead, Wan still felt a little upset when she saw these things she had inherited from him. Ah Wan, are you still thinking about the old god? Lotus Sun asked. She could actually sense that Awan and the old god had a very close relationship. But there was nothing she could do now. She could only step forward and gently put a hand on Awan's shoulder to comfort her. Although the old god did something terrible to me, I've always regarded her as a mother. But I've always seen her as my mother. Awan sighed. She opened a box, and a golden feather appeared in front of the three girls. This feather was like a white flame, emitting light like the sun. After Awan poured her divine power into it, the whole feather seemed to be burning, shining with mysterious runes. It looked like a feather that was burning fiercely, but it gave off a cold fire that wasn't scalding. This cold fire had the power to freeze everything. Golden divine feather. Awan said, back then, the old god found a treasure in order to freeze her appearance. She tried to use the golden divine feather to freeze her appearance, but unfortunately, she couldn't reverse the rejuvenation of her body. These things are of great significance to you, right? Lotus Sun asked. Well, they used to be. But now, I think I should look forward. Awan smiled, her face flushed, and she looked so cute that people wanted to kiss her. Rongrong and Ing can choose any of these things. Huh? Is that okay? Why not? In my room, as long as you like it, you can have it. Of course, compared with what Ling Jinren gave you, these things might not be worth much, but they're still a token of my appreciation. Each of you has to choose at least one. Lotus Sun was a little hesitant. After all, she wasn't someone who liked to take advantage of others. But since Awan had said so, she had to give face to the world king of the god world. It was just that she was a little dazzled by the dazzling array of objects in front of her, and didn't know what to choose. Why not just pick something that doesn't look that valuable? What's this? Lotus Sun asked, pointing at an ugly little stone. Hey. Rongrong has a good eye. This is a holy moon stone. It can instantly help a spirit beast complete the next stage of evolution. Upgrade from 4th class to 3rd class. Upgrade from 3rd class to 2nd class. One gushed on. If it's a 1st class spirit beast, it can be upgraded to a holy beast. Holy beasts have been extinct for a long time, and there are less than 3 holy moon stones left in the universe. This is one of them. I'll change to something else. Lotus Sun was stupefied. She hadn't expected this stone to be so valuable. She cautiously scanned her surroundings. After all, she was the daughter of Huagua Water Curtain Group, and her ability to recognize things was almost innate. Wherever her eyes landed, there was definitely something valuable. This was actually one of the reasons why the old man had a good impression of Wang Ling. Because given his granddaughter's vision, if she really took a fancy to a boy, that boy would definitely have great potential. So even if Wang Ling's profile clearly stated that he was only at the foundation establishment stage, old man's son didn't care at all. So what if he was at the foundation establishment stage? As long as it was a boy that his granddaughter took a fancy to, he would definitely become a true immortal in the future. After observing for a long time, Lotus Sun finally found something that was very familiar to her. This is a youth-retaining pill, right? She asked, pointing to a pink elixir. This elixir was placed in an unassuming jar, and was almost no different from the youth-retaining pills refined by Huagua Water Curtain Group. It wasn't strange for a girl's room to have youth-retaining pills. No. This is an ageless pill. It was refined with the soul power of my ageless soul. After eating it, you won't age for the rest of your life. Said Awan. Won't age for the rest of your life? Yes, not for the rest of my life. Awan nodded affirmatively. But unfortunately, this ageless pill can't fulfill the old god's wish. Rongrong is an earthling, and the ageless pill is perfect for you. With the old god's divine body, the ageless pill can't reverse the situation. I see. Lotus Sun nodded. But she still put the jar back in its place. Hey, doesn't Rongrong want to remain youthful for the rest of her life? Asked Awan. She actually didn't quite understand Lotus Sun's behavior. For a girl, appearance was always the most important thing. I think it's also a very happy thing to be able to grow old with the person you like. Lotus Sun shook her head and smiled. In any case, given classmate Wang Ling's strength, if he didn't want to grow old, he probably wouldn't, right? Wan. What's this? On the other side, Sun Yinger looked around the room for a long time, and finally found a green stick from a box under Wan's bed. There were even bumps on the stick, and it looked a little ugly and wretched. I remember now, this is the old god's thing. Wan stared at the green stick for a long time, then said, "This seems to be the old god's favorite thing when he was alive. It's said to be used for massage." Wan actually didn't quite understand the use of this green stick. The main thing was that it was thick and short, and didn't look like the legendary jade dog beating stick. Thus, Wan had thoughtfully hidden this stick, and hadn't expected Sun Yinger to find it. Your taste is too poor. Why do you keep looking for strange things?" Lotus Sun put her hand to her forehead. She could only say that this was indeed her shadow. "All right. I know Rongrong doesn't lack sticks," said Sun Yinger. "What nonsense are you talking about? Doesn't old man Sun have a stick passed down from generation to generation?" "He'll definitely pass it on to you in the future," said Sun Yinger. Realizing that she had tainted Sun Yinger's words, she couldn't help but blush. Sun Yinger chuckled and casually threw the stick on the bed. Humph. How could she not understand the meaning of her words? She had predicted that the other party would think that she had tainted her words. This was the highest level of teasing. Wan, you don't say, your old god really has a lot of strange things." Sun Yinger found that she was getting a little addicted to flipping under the bed. "What is this?" Sun Yinger pointed at a black pill sealed in a medicine box and asked. "Lengthening pill," Wan replied. Put it down," she shouted. "What's that?" Sun Yinger had a look of disbelief on her face. When the old god and Tao ancestor were dating, they would sometimes feel lonely and write romance novels. This pill is for short story writers to use. After taking it, their writing will become very long, Wan explained. After explaining, Lotus Sun's face turned even redder. On the way back to Earth, the temperature on Lotus Sun's face never stopped. She suspected that Sun Yinger was doing this on purpose, purposely picking strange things to ask. After returning to Lotus Sun's bedroom, Sun Yinger was still snickering mischievously. What she loved the most was her Rongrong's bashful reactions. Those strange things the old god had left in Wan's room were secondary. The most important thing was Rongrong's cute reactions. What are you snickering about?" Lotus Sun felt that the corners of Sun Yinger's mouth had been curling up like crazy ever since she came back, and it had almost never stopped. Sigh, nothing. He just felt that the black shorts were pretty good. "That's Tao ancestor Wang's underwear," Sun Yinger said with a look of pity. "What do I want Tao ancestor's underwear for?" Lotus Sun said angrily. In fact, neither Sun Yinger nor Lotus Sun had expected that the old god would even collect Tao ancestor's underwear. According to Wan, wearing Tao ancestor Wang's underwear could make one's six senses calm and tranquil, as well as quell one's desires. And so, this pair of Tao ancestor Wang's underwear also had a nickname, Wang Chuchong. The scene turned awkward for a moment. In the end, Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger didn't choose anything, and Lotus Sun hurriedly pushed Sun Yinger back. If this girl was allowed to continue searching, who knew what other strange things she might unearth? Wan also realized that the room was a little messy, so he agreed to leave the right to choose things for another time, and sent them back to Earth first. In the bedroom, Sun Yinger and Guyu leaned back on the sofa with a regretful expression on their faces. Wrong. I still want that pair of underwear. Really? Look at that gorilla Wang Ying. If he had this thing on him, he wouldn't have gone overboard with me. As soon as she said this, she was swept away by a black shadow once again. This time, Lotus Sun didn't even have time to reply. Everything had happened too suddenly. Lotus Sun thought that Sun Yinger could change her nickname to Sun Anxiang. It was Monday, December 7th. It was the day number 60 high school resumed classes. When everyone arrived at number 60 high school, they were stunned by the towering school buildings and the wide school gates. The entirety of number 60 high school had been completely refurbished from the inside out. It was truly brand new and different from its previous appearance. Take that old, faded stone sculpture at the school gates for example. After being battered by countless elements, it had finally been retired, and Headmaster Chen had placed it in the school history exhibition hall. Now, the number 60 high school students were greeted at the gate every day by a golden statue of Audiobook. And it was designed to stand on a flying sword. It really gave people the feeling that a hero had arrived and that they were moving forward bravely. Looking at it from afar, it made people's blood boil. I heard that Senior Zhua's statue was already under construction a long time ago. It was originally made of gold sand. Now that our school has money, it's been changed to pure gold. Made of gold sand? Isn't that a sand sculpture? A lot of people in number 60 high school uniforms were discussing this at the school gates. It was the day number 60 high school resumed classes, and a lot of parents had personally come to take their children to school, mainly to see how the school environment had changed. Such a rich and overbearing change made the parents feel relieved. Now that the school had money, this pleasant learning environment would naturally give people a sense of comfort. On the other hand, the quality of the teachers would definitely be a level higher than before. A black commercial car drove past the school gates. Jiang Xiaoche was in the driver's seat and was about to unbuckle his seatbelt, get out and open the door for Lotus Sunday. But the girl refused on the spot. "Brother Xiaoche, there's no need, I can do it myself. You don't need to get out of the car to help me in the future." Jiang Xiaoche frowned. "But that's against the rules. Rules are made by people. I now feel that there's no harm in keeping a low profile." Lotus Sun smiled. She directly opened the door and got out of the car, then followed the people around her into the school. Jiang Xiaoche gnashed his teeth at this scene. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he watched the girl enter the school surrounded by a group of people. Only then did he drive away. At a corner, Jiang Xiaoche took out his phone and began to lay out a battle plan. "Is everything ready?" A deep male voice swiftly came from the other end of the phone. "Everything is ready. On the way home from school today, everything will be carried out according to Brother Zhang's instructions." "Good." Jiang Xiaoche nodded. Chapter 1392. The first day number 60 high school resumed classes meant that Wang Ling wouldn't have to take online classes, wouldn't have to record learning videos at home, and wouldn't have to receive messages every morning from Old Pan calling out names online and publicly punishing those who hadn't handed in their homework. He thought his life was finally back on track. But it turned out that the trouble was far more than that. The night before school resumed, Wang Ling's eyelids began to twitch regularly. It wasn't a particularly high-level alarm. But this was clearly a bad warning. After experiencing so many incidents, Wang Ling's eyelid warning now had a whole new understanding of the level of trouble, and wouldn't easily trigger a warning for small troubles. Unless something explosive was going to happen next. Big trouble on the first day of school? As expected of myself. Wang Ling mused in his heart. Number 60 High School's main gate. Wang Ling saw number 60 High School's new look, and it was indeed a lot more luxurious than he had imagined. The statue of Audiobook standing on a flying sword in front of the gate startled Wang Ling, for no other reason than that its posture was too silly. Wang Ling remembered how Audiobook had proudly explained the statue's black technology to him last night. It was said that the pendulum clock in number 60 High School's teaching building had merged with Audiobook's statue. Audiobook stood on the flying sword, the tip of the sword aimed at the hour hand, while his right hand held the second and minute hands, so the entire statue's posture would constantly change as time passed. Of course, the funniest thing was at noon and midnight. An opening would automatically open at the crotch of Audiobook's statue, and a golden pendulum would descend from inside to swing between its thighs, walking along the school square in the direction of the teaching building, Wang Ling saw a lot of students lining up on both sides of the school square. Super Chen and Hero Gua, these two buffoons, were impressively at the end of the line. Wang Ling! Hero Gua called out from afar. The little fatty had clearly neglected to exercise during this period of time at home, and Wang Ling felt that Hero Gua seemed to have put on a lot of weight. In fact, Wang Ling himself had also put on weight. Fortunately, he had already used the big fat spell to rub off the fat, and now stored it in the king's eye space in case he needed it. Wang Ling didn't know what the two of them were lining up for, so he walked over to take a look. He probably wasn't the kind of person who liked doing good things. But he couldn't resist Super Chen and Hero Gua's enthusiastic greetings, and it would be impolite if he didn't respond. Why do I feel like you have dark circles under your eyes? You look like you haven't woken up yet. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were saving the world again at home. Super Chen took the initiative to put his arm around Wang Ling's shoulder. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He knew Super Chen was joking. In this day and age, dark eye circles were the bane of his reputation. How would he dare to show them again? It was true that he didn't sleep well. It wasn't because he didn't get enough sleep that his mental state wasn't good. On the other hand, it was because of his dead fish eyes. This kind of eye shape always gave people the feeling that he didn't sleep enough. On the other hand, yesterday's sudden eyelid warning had scared Wang Ling so much. However, it was obvious that the eyelid warning was not referring to the current situation. Our school is really rich now. There's even a teleportation array in the school square. Hero Gua explained to Wang Ling, this is specially made for students who are late. It's open 24 hours a day, and all the information has already been entered into the back end of the school array control system. As long as you enter the school square, you'll be able to directly step into the transmission array and be transported to your classroom. It can teleport up to 10 people at a time. Wang Ling nodded. He finally understood, this was the legendary welfare of lazy people. But they actually didn't need to use this kind of array at all since they were already in the classroom on the first floor. It would be a lot faster to walk there than to queue up for the teleportation array. It's our first time, so let's experience it. The main thing is that our school's facilities are much bigger now, and the teaching buildings are much wider. For a moment, some people can't figure out where their classrooms are, Super Chen said. Very soon, it was their turn. Hero Gua put his arm around Wang Ling and Super Chen's shoulders as they walked in together. Wait for me. At that moment, Little Peanut hurriedly rushed over and caught the last bus. Before he was teleported, he bowed and apologized to the people behind him. Sorry. We're in the same class. The schoolmates still in line didn't mind too much. There was a buzz. Wang Ling and the others appeared at the door of Grade 1, Class 3. It was a classroom on the far right of Teaching Block 1. And then, there was no then, smoke started to rise from the school square. The teleportation array which Wang Ling had just used was broken on the spot. Hero Gua, what's going on? We just finished using it, and it broke? Super Chen, it must have been used too often, because this array is meant for people who are about to be late. It can teleport up to 10 people at a time, and we've only used 4. It's not like it's overloaded. Unless there's someone weighing more than 1,000 gene. Wang Ling, after returning to the classroom without a hitch, Little Peanut started to collect homework. Because it was done online, he collected USB drives this time. So far, apart from the teleportation array outside, there didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary, but Wang Ling was still very vigilant. When it came to collect Wang Ling's USB drive, Little Peanut said, Wang Ling, it looks like there's something in your locker. Of all the lockers, yours is the only one that's lit up. Locker? Wang Ling was startled. It's a new facility the school added, and everyone has one. It seems that the school distributes benefits on holidays and festivals into these lockers for everyone to pick up. Our class picks up stuff next door, and it's merged with Class 2. Little Peanut pointed in a direction. It's so early in the morning, who would stuff things into your storage box? Hero Gua was curious and snorted. Could it be a love letter? I don't think it's very likely. Super Chin raised his eyebrows, and his tone involuntarily turned sour. Last semester, Wang Ling didn't receive a single love letter. It's most likely someone's prank. Wang Ling was silent. Now, it seemed that the contents of the storage box were indeed the prank love letter that someone had delivered. Fortunately, he had a habit of arriving at school early. Since there weren't many people around, he should hurry up and take it out. Wang Ling hurriedly got up and went to the locker next door to look for the box. As Su Xiao had said, his was the only one with a red light, and he could find it at a glance. Hero Gua and Super Chin followed behind him to join in the fun. The default password is 4 zeros. Wang Ling, hurry up and open it. Hero Gua looked like he was watching a good show. Wang Ling entered the password. There was a ding. A pile of envelopes sealed with love stickers fell out of the box with a crash and instantly reached Wang Ling's knees. Lotus Sun, who was passing by, happened to see this scene. Chapter 1393. There were all kinds of love letters, and there were more than 100 of them. Hero Gua, Super Chin and the others followed behind to help Wang Ling tidy up. When they were tidying up, some of the letters weren't glued together, and the paper inside fell out, giving Hero Gua a chance to gossip. For a moment, the people in the storeroom at the back became onlookers. Dear classmate Wang, Hero Gua lifted his head after reading a letter, and was startled. F***K. It was really written for Wang Ling? He continued to read, Classmate Wang, I've admired you for a long time. When I think of your strong physique, I can't sleep at night. Do you remember, you once looked back and smiled at me? Wang Ling looked back and smiled. Super Chin laughed foolishly. As expected, it was a prank. How could Wang Ling look back and smile at someone? They might not all be pranks. There are so many, and the handwriting is different. Hero Gua casually opened the rest of the letters and started to read. Classmate Wang. I really like you. Can I be your girlfriend? I'm very cute. Classmate Wang, even if we're not in the same school, I always believe in what a certain cartoon says, yearning will cross time and space to bring me to your side. Classmate Wang, I don't know what style you like, but I can change for you. I've been eating papaya every day recently. Classmate Wang. I heard you like fair-skinned girls, so I use a cucumber mask every day for you. A lot of girls in our class are fighting to imitate me, and the price of cucumbers in the market has gone up because of you. Wang Ling, Hero Gua and Super Chin. Hero Gua was so scared that he dropped the letters on the spot. In these letters, Lola's, mature sisters, salty and sweet, there were all kinds of girls. Inside and outside school, hospitals, internet cafes, and all kinds of work units. There are even girls outside school, and there are even female university students who are already working. Before Hero Gua could shout at the top of his lungs, Super Chin and Little Peanut covered his mouth. Are you crazy? Why are you shouting so loudly? Super Chin hinted at the door with his eyes. There was no one there, but the three of them were well aware that Lotus Sun was on the side. Because there were so many letters, they did not know whether they were real or fake. There was definitely an element of mischief in it, but if there was a real confession letter, it would be a disaster if it wasn't handled properly. Anyway, what we can confirm now is that there's definitely no one in our class. I know the handwriting of the girls in our class. Su Xiao said. He was the commissary in charge of studies, so he came into contact with everyone's homework almost every day. He was very confident in recognizing handwriting. It wasn't that there weren't other girls in class who liked Wang Ling, the main thing was that Lotus Sun was here. Furthermore, Lotus Sun had publicly confessed to Wang Ling a long time ago, and no one was willing to offend that rich young lady. There are too many letters, and I think it's very difficult for Wang Ling himself. I think I'll handle this matter. At that moment, Super Chin stepped forward and volunteered. Wang Ling was startled and thought he had heard wrong. These letters might be half true and half false. If you throw them all away, you'll definitely be criticized if you're discovered. If you accept it, some girls might misunderstand that you are interested in them. So, Wang Ling, just pretend you don't know about this, Super Chen said. As a man who had received love letters in junior high, Super Chen seemed to be very experienced in dealing with this kind of situation. He reached out and patted Wang Ling on the shoulder. We're all good brothers. Leave it to me. His unswerving eyes revealed his strong conviction. Overall, Wang Ling felt that Super Chen was a reliable man. Furthermore, he had never expected Super Chen to actually choose this time to help him. What a good brother. Wang Ling looked back at him gratefully. Finally, he hadn't cultivated a relationship with his classmates for nothing. But somehow, Wang Ling felt that this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. Elsewhere, just before school ended, Jiang Xiaoqi received a piece of news. According to his original plan, he had hired a group of thugs from the underworld. The one with the highest realm was a nascent soul cultivator, who was nicknamed Old Grey. Old Grey, along with a dozen or so golden core cultivators, planned to surround Wang Ling and Lotus Sun on the way back from school. Hiring such a large group of people had cost Jiang Xiaoqi a lot. 2 years of his salary had been wiped out overnight. But he didn't feel bad about it. All of this was for the sake of capturing Lotus Sun, and then tying her to his belt forever. In the end, just before school ended, Old Grey received information about love letters. What? You're saying that Wang Ling has received a lot of love letters? Is this information reliable? Jiang Xiaoqi asked. Very reliable, Brother Jiang. I also spent money to hire students to spy on him, and I heard that Miss Sun was depressed all day. Old Grey replied, of course, I heard that some of the love letters were mischievous, but there were so many that some of them were real. Also, the love letters were written to all sorts of girls, both inside and outside the school. Then what about these love letters? Jiang Xiaoqi's interest was piqued. These love letters were the key. If you, Wang Ling, hadn't flirted with women everywhere, how could you have gotten so many love letters? Since these love letters were the key evidence, he had to get his hands on them. When the time came, Old Man's son would have to believe them even if he didn't want to. These love letters seemed to be in the hands of a person called Super Chen, who has a pretty good relationship with Wang Ling. It seems that he intends to help Wang Ling get rid of these love letters, Old Grey said. Jiang Xiaoqi nodded. Then after school, send another group of people to snatch these love letters back. Understood. In a van on the side of the street, Old Grey nodded and hung up. Sitting in the front passenger seat, he called out to the people behind him. Brothers, did you hear what Brother Jiang said? Since you did, let's take action. Yes, the people in the back replied. A whole car full of people. Invisibility talismans stuck on their bodies, and armed with steel pipes, broadswords, and all kinds of dangerous controlled weapons, they jumped out of the car one after another. These weapons looked very dangerous, but in fact, they had been specially made. They just looked scary. Jiang Xiaoqi might have been fooling around, but he was in fact still afraid of hurting Lotus Sunday. Thus, these weapons were special props for filming blockbusters. They looked dangerous, but in fact, when you really hit them, you wouldn't feel any pain at all. And so, on this day after school at number 60 high school, a miraculous scene unfolded. Super Chen, who was about to leave the school gates to deal with the love letters, was immediately targeted by Old Grey's group. Lotus Sun had seen Old Grey's group again. Behind them were Wang Zhen and Fang Xing. And then Wang Ling, he was at the very back of everyone else. In the morning, he had actually already guessed who on earth was behind the prank love letters. But now, these two werewolves had already jumped out. Wang Ling was puzzled, and didn't understand what on earth Wang Zhen and Fang Xing's goal was. Could it be that they were so bored that they wanted to observe Lotus Sun's reaction? In any case, Wang Ling already knew. These love letters had originally been written for Wang Zhen. Then, if he intercepted them and gave them to Lu Qingyi, what kind of miraculous chemical reaction would happen? Kneeling on a durian was unavoidable. Chapter 1394. As soon as they left the school gate, Lotus Sun noticed a suspicious group of people following Superchin. These people were furtively wearing invisibility talismans, but this level of invisibility was already completely exposed to Mysterious C's sword chi. Mysterious C's sword chi was like a radar that could easily scan the average invisible unit. At first, she didn't know that this group of people had also come for the love letters Super Chen was carrying. It wasn't until Mysterious C used his sword chi to draw the secret conversation of the trackers into her ears that Lotus Sun confirmed the other party's objective. Be careful, there are still a lot of people around. Don't make a move now. There's a dark alley up ahead. There's an opportunity there. Our team's mission is just the love letters. Got it. Just grab the love letters and knock them out. Yes. Hearing this, Lotus Sun was completely stupefied. Forget about men who snatched men from women these days. But there were actually men who snatched love letters from women. Had he been single for so long that he could read love letters with delicate features? Lotus Sun felt that there was something strange about the entire love letter incident. She knew that someone had to be playing a prank behind the scenes in these hundreds of love letters, but what if some of them were real? Thus, after struggling for an entire day, Lotus Sun still decided to split her attention to investigate. In addition, the young girl had also keenly captured one thing from the conversation just now. That was what one of them had said about our team's mission. Did that mean that there was actually a second and third team plotting something else? It seemed that this was a premeditated operation. This group's goal might not just be the love letters. At that moment, the young girl suddenly thought of something very scary. Could it be that someone had hidden some important information in these love letters? She thought of the common plot lines in movies and TV dramas. In order to ensure that no evidence of their crimes was left behind, a group of vicious criminals would use primitive methods to transmit information and communicate code words, and then plan a terrorist attack. Today was number 60 High's first day back at school. There had to be a problem with this suspicious group of people appearing at this time. Moreover, one of the teleportation arrays in the school square was broken this morning. That was a newly built array. Who the hell knew if this group had done it? No, we have to stop these people. Lotus Sun had originally been after Super Chen's love letter. As a result, after following them all the way here, she noticed this group of suspicious people. Lotus Sun felt that if she didn't do anything, the situation might develop in an even more serious direction. Wasn't classmate Ling's purpose in upgrading her spirit sword so that she could protect herself, protect her friends and companions, and uphold justice in a timely manner? Wang Ling, behind her. Fang Xing, Wang Zhen and Wang Ling at the back couldn't help gaping. After they used the mind-reading technique to listen to the girl's thoughts, their facial expressions and movements could be said to be the same, and they all looked stunned. It could only be said that Lotus Sun was truly Lotus Sun. He had only walked less than 100 meters out of the school gate, but he had already made up the script in his head. At that moment, he lowered his head and put his hands in his trouser pockets as he walked forward, pretending that nothing had happened. The other group that Lotus Sun was talking about was in fact right behind him. They were also wearing invisibility talismans and were moving stealthily, but the leader was very cautious. Old Gray was following behind them with the other group. Although he had already confirmed Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's position, he hadn't found a suitable opportunity to make a move. He looked around vigilantly, sweat beading on his forehead. These idiots. Do they think they'll be fine just because they put on invisibility talismans? They don't even know they've been discovered. It could only be said that in the end, Old Gray was Old Gray. In any case, he was a nascent soul expert, and had long since sensed that their operation had been exposed. They've been exposed? No way. Aren't the enemies we're dealing with only at the Foundation establishment stage? The invisibility talisman that Brother Jiang gave us is top-notch. Anyone below the nascent soul stage won't be able to see through it, said one of the underlings. For this operation, Jiang Shaoche had even spent a lot of money to prepare props. He was the chief secretary general of Huaguo Water Curtain Group and Old Man Sun's personal figure. How could he use street stall goods to support this operation? I don't know what's going on either. Old Gray was also very puzzled. Who the hell knew how a foundation establishment cultivator could be so good at distinguishing things? On the contrary, these golden core and nascent soul thugs were like street stall goods. They had also cultivated step by step to get to where they were now. At that moment, Old Gray was very depressed. They were all people who had made mistakes when they were young and had criminal records. Thus, even if they had high realms, no company would dare hire them. Nowadays, even moving bricks at construction sites required criminal records. Thus, Old Gray could only take the lead in this kind of business and join the loyalty team. It sounded like a triad, but in fact, it was a social and emotional organization that specialized in testing the feelings between men and women. Although they were called thugs, they actually hadn't really hit anyone since they turned over a new leaf, and were only acting as thugs. What should we do? Miss Sun has already sensed them. Should we call off the operation? Someone asked. Old Gray was also conflicted about this question. Ever since they had joined the loyalty team, they had never failed a mission before. The number of scumbags who had fully exposed their true nature under their deliberate intimidation was innumerable. It wasn't that there were no couples who chose to protect each other and face danger together in the face of danger. But based on the cases Old Gray had participated in, when their lives were in danger, most people would choose to push the people around them out and run away alone. According to Zhang Xiaochu's original plan, Old Gray and the others had planned to record Wang Ling's reaction after they attacked Lotus Sunday. But now, the team that had gone to snatch the love letter had been exposed. It seemed that they couldn't continue with the mission. But Old Gray felt that this might be a good opportunity. Because snatching the love letter wasn't the main objective to begin with, Miss Sun's attention is now on the team in front of us, so I think it's the right time to act. At that moment, Old Gray grit his teeth and took out a purple reagent from his chinkuan bag. "What's this?" asked one of his lackeys next to him. This wasn't supposed to be a prop for this operation, but in order to ensure the success of the operation, Old Gray decided to use it from his collection. This is fear water. When you throw it on the ground, the fear gas inside will quickly evaporate. Within a radius of 500 meters, the weaker party will be more afraid of the stronger party. It's the best tool to test those scumbags. The greater the gap in their realms, the stronger the fear effect, and in severe cases, they'll directly go into shock. It's that useful? But it only lasts for 3 minutes, so we have to make it quick. Pa. After saying that, Old Gray, who was following behind Wang Ling, immediately threw the reagent on the ground. The gas evaporated continuously. When Old Gray and his lackeys saw Wang Ling's back, they suddenly felt like they were going to have a heart attack. Chapter 1395. A strong sense of discomfort spread through the hearts of Old Gray and the lackeys behind him. Their faces swiftly turned white, and they started to have difficulty breathing. Old Gray didn't know what on earth was going on, let alone why a foundation establishment youngster's back looked so terrifying. In the eyes of Old Gray and the others, Wang Ling was now a ferocious prehistoric beast bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. Was this the legendary back shadow kill? In a split second, the dozen or so invisible units behind Wang Ling, led by Old Gray, all fell to the ground. Old Gray struggled on the ground, then completely lost consciousness and fell into a temporary state of shock. The battle was already over before it had even started. The gas emitted by the water of fear was colorless and odorless, and wasn't easy to detect. But even Old Gray himself couldn't have imagined this. In addition to having a terrifying back, the contestant in front of him was also a walking air purifier. Before the gas emitted by the water of fear could completely diffuse through the air, Wang Ling had already inhaled it and purified it completely. Wang Ling's ability to purify his body was unimaginable. Otherwise, with the power of the water of fear, who knew how many people within a radius of 500 meters would have fainted? Wang Zhen and Fang Xing followed behind Lotus Sunday. They were sure that she had already sensed the invisible units in front of them. Dual Mysterious Sea is indeed amazing. I feel like I'm no match for her now. Wang Zhen swallowed. He could already feel the terror of Mysterious C's sword chi from several bodies away. And this was just the normal flow of sword chi. It was like a bottle of perfume that emitted a fragrance into the surroundings. Lotus Sun hadn't released Mysterious C's sword chi at all, but its aura was already very terrifying. Is this the most powerful Foundation establishment cultivator? Very strong indeed. Fang Xing rubbed his chin and said meaningfully, "Let's retreat." Now that Lotus Sun had become stronger, they might be exposed if they continued to follow her. Didn't you want to observe classmate Sun's reaction? Wang Zhen asked telepathically. That's enough. It looks like she cares a lot. Otherwise, she wouldn't have followed him right after school, said Fang Xing. They had chosen to follow Lotus Sun earlier because they wanted to see her reaction, but also because they had noticed a group of suspicious people wearing invisibility talismans. As a core member of Battle's sect, Lotus Sun was like a younger sister to Wang Zhen, and Fang Xing worried that something might happen. They followed behind Lotus Sunday. But now, after truly sensing the terrifying sword chi released by the Mysterious Sea powder, Fang Xing felt that it was no longer necessary. To use a classic movie line, Lotus Sun could now put her hands on her hips and shout, "I want to fight 10." However, it was judged according to the actual situation. With this kind of combat power, even if there were hundreds of millions of golden core cultivators, it would still be useless. Sure enough, Wang Zhen and Fang Xing had only taken a few steps down the other path. There was movement in the dark alley. Lotus Sun stepped into the dark alley and released powerful sword chi. Boom! A huge pressure descended from the sky, instantly shaking the members of the loyalty team, causing them to foam at the mouth and fall to the ground. Student Lotus Sun? Why are you here? Chenda was shocked. He had no idea what was going on. He heard the sound of someone falling to the ground behind him. When he turned around, he saw Lotus Sun standing behind him. Super Chin, I'm sorry. Super Chin had no idea what was going on at all when Lotus Sun swiftly knocked him out with a karate chop. Lotus Sun had held back, and her palm was covered with a trace of Mysterious C's sword chi, which was enough to knock Super Chin out. The girl's actions were clean and decisive, without the slightest bit of hesitation. In almost the blink of an eye, all these people with invisibility talismans had been knocked out by Lotus Sun's sword chi. She collected all the love letters, then helped the unconscious Super Chin to one side before calling Jiang Xiaoche. When Jiang Xiaoche received Lotus Sun's message, he thought that his plan had succeeded, and was overjoyed. "Miss, what's wrong? Did you run into some trouble?" "Yes. Very troublesome." Lotus Sun thought for a bit, then nodded. "The main thing is that a lot of people fainted." "What?" Jiang Xiaoche was stupefied. "There was a group of Golden Core criminals following my classmates. I don't know what happened, but they all seem to have fainted. Before they wake up, Brother Xiaoche, hurry over and take care of it. Also, that classmate of mine called Super Chin also fainted. Remember to take him home," said Lotus Sunday. After hanging up, little friend Jiang Xiaoche had a lot of question marks in his heart. And so, on the first day number 60 high school went back to school, it was on the news. It wasn't because of number 60 high school's renovation. The content of the news broadcast was mainly related to a car accident in front of number 60 high school. When Wang Ling watched the news, he felt that the female anchor was holding back her laughter as she reported the incident. The female anchor, a car accident happened in front of number 60 high school in Peiyuan District, Songhai City. 14 men with invisibility talismans and special movie props in their hands lay neatly on the road in front of number 60 high school. Parents who were driving their children to and from school couldn't avoid them in time and ran over them. Please read the interview in detail. On TV, a female reporter gave Old Gray a microphone. "May I ask who you are? Why did you appear in front of the school with invisibility talismans on?" We are members of the film crew. We forgot to take off the talismans on our way home after filming, and then we fainted from exhaustion," Old Gray explained with quick wits. His face and body were covered in wheel marks. More than a dozen cars had run over him. If it wasn't for his realm foundation, he would probably have already become minced meat. As for the golden core cultivators behind him, they weren't so lucky. Like Old Grey, they had been forced to suffer the experience of being repeatedly run over by cars. It was just that they weren't unscathed like Old Grey. Apart from the wheel marks on their bodies, most of them had broken bones. It had been many years since he had joined the loyalty squad. Although Old Ash had the experience of laughing and joking with the squad members and cracking dirty jokes, he had never experienced it before. It was just that he had never thought that one day there would really be a car running over his face. This was a real car running over his face. 2F*** King Unlucky. At the same time, in the top floor office of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, Sun Yiyuan received a report from Jiang Shaoqi. HM. Rongrong was attacked by a group of people with invisibility talismans on her way home from school, and then they inexplicably fainted? Sun Yiyuan put down the newspaper with a serious expression on his face. Yes. Jiang Shaoqi nodded. Although Miss was scared but not hurt, that classmate Wang Ling actually just watched from behind during the whole process. He didn't do anything at all. That's really too much. Shaoqi, it's not that I want to criticize you, but your hostility towards classmate Wang seems a little obvious. Old man Sun rolled his eyes and said, you already said that this group of people had invisibility talismans on them. He's only at the foundation establishment stage. How could he know that someone was planning to attack Rongrong? The logic was clear and organized, and Jiang Shaoqi instantly felt that he couldn't refute it. After saying this, Old Man Sun smiled. They say that classmate Wang is a mascot, and it's true. Look, Rongrong was supposed to be in danger, but Wang Ling just happened to be behind her. In the end, Wang Ling just happened to be behind her. Didn't he indirectly help Rongrong avert danger? I never thought that classmate Wang would have a good wife constitution. Jiang Shaoqi was stupefied. What F*** King, good wife? However, he still wasn't convinced. But I heard that he received a lot of love letters today. How many? More than 100. That's just like me back then. Even when I received thousands of letters back then, I wasn't as surprised as you are. A lot means that he's charming. This indirectly proves that Rongrong's taste is indeed good. In the bedroom, Lotus Sun dumped all the love letters on her bed. Sun Yinger was shocked. So many love letters. Can you read them all, Rongrong? You still have the task of retrieving the Rubik's Cube tonight. Sitting upright on the bed with her arms crossed, she took a deep breath and said resolutely, investigate. Loopy Toad will be here in half an hour. Read as many as you can. Chapter 1396. Jiang Shaoqi had realized a very serious problem. All along, it seemed that everything he had done to target Wang Ling had been an assist. Of course, he felt that he couldn't be entirely blamed for this. The main thing was that Old Man Sun's fandom filter was too strong, and he could even imagine something as magical as a wife who brings good fortune. For all, what the hell was this? After returning home, Jiang Shaoqi opened a bottle of champagne and poured it into a goblet to relieve stress. He had planned to drown his sorrows, but the more he thought about it, the more aggrieved he became. There was a crack. He used all his strength, and the goblet in his hand was actually crushed. You've got guts, Wang Ling. When it comes to picking up girls, Jiang Shaoqi will call you number one. As a man with dignity, he wouldn't give up on pursuing Lotus Sunday. At the same time, as a big pig trotter, he also needed to relieve stress for himself. Jiang Yingying, who looked very much like Lotus Sun, had been on his mind the last time he hadn't been able to ask her out. In any case, he had nothing else to do now, so he turned his attention back to Jiang Yingying. Big sis, wanna ask her out? Jiang Shaoqi changed to a new WeChat account and tried to add her as a friend. A few seconds later, there was the sound of a cell phone being smashed. He had been blacklisted by Jiang Yingying again. This was simply the standard ending. On the other side, Jiang Shaoqi was very gloomy. On the other side, in Lotus Sun's room, she was also very gloomy. The two girls sat on the bed and checked the letters one by one. Sun Yinger summoned a few of her clones to help her check them, and after reading less than 20 letters, she felt tired. Wang Ying had just trained her on the moon yesterday, and she still hadn't recovered yet. Furthermore, because Lotus Sun had been on a mission to retrieve the Rubik's Cube, her training schedule had been changed at the last minute. It used to be that she would report to the moon at 8:00 sharp every night. Now, it had been changed to 2 hours a day at random intervals. She remembered that she still had to write her daily self-reflection. At that moment, she still had to divert her attention to help her Rongrong check the love letters. Sun Yinger felt like the heroine in a tragedy. It was really too miserable. After a preliminary screening based on Lotus Sun's standards, she had already eliminated more than 60% of the more than 100 love letters. Some looked like pranks, while others were directly removed from the list of competitors, based on the handwriting alone. I think the expression of this letter is quite sincere. Why did Rongrong remove it just based on the handwriting? Sun Yinger frowned and couldn't help but ask. The content is really good. The language is rich and full, and the wording is gorgeous and touching. But it's a pity that the words are round. This girl probably doesn't manage her weight well. I don't think classmate Wang Ling will like this kind of chubby girl. Lotus Sun buried her head in the letter and said with a serious expression, in addition, this girl's writing is too heavy, which proves that she usually has a fiery temper. But the words she expressed were full of delicacy, to use 4 words to describe it, duplicity. Sun Yinger swallowed a mouthful of saliva. When a woman was serious, the smell of gunpowder was too strong. Although there was not a single dirty word in her words, it still made Sun Yinger feel a dangerous atmosphere. The girl had been wearing this expression ever since she started checking the letter. It was as if she had changed into another person and had no intention of relaxing. Sun Yinger had wanted to tease Lotus Sun a little, but Lotus Sun seemed to be immune to it. When Rongrong was serious, it was really scary. Rongrong, what are you going to do with these girls? Are you going to catch them and throw them into the river? Sun Yinger asked, trembling. We're living in a society ruled by law. How could I do this kind of underworld business? Hearing this, Lotus Sun fell into deep thought. After a long silence, she said cautiously, it depends. Such as? Introduce them to a new boyfriend, or give them enough money to send them abroad. In any case, at their age, they just want something fresh, Lotus Sun said. You don't want something fresh? Sun Yinger asked. Lotus Sun raised her head at this question, and she looked at Sun Yinger with a very firm expression. I'm not. I know, Rongrong. Sun Yinger had just mentioned it casually, and hadn't expected Lotus Sun to answer her so seriously. In half an hour, with the help of Sun Yinger and her split body, Lotus Sun successfully sifted through all the letters. In the end, there were only 9 love letters left. Should I ask the old man to check them? Sun Yinger asked. No need. Grandpa would laugh at me. Lotus Sun shook her head. At that moment, Loopy Toad's voice came from outside her bedroom door. Did I interrupt your census? It had been directly teleported here by Lord Ma, and landed in front of Lotus Sun's door. Come in. Just as Lotus Sun thought of Loopy Toad, it appeared. She was puzzled. How did you know what I was doing? The fly at number 60 High's door told me. This king is very well informed now. Loopy Toad smiled. The demon world of the human world wasn't nearly as satisfying as the big meat flies of the demon world. Since it was tasteless, it was better to use it instead. This was Loopy Toad's Human World Flies Incorporation plan. You actually control an intelligence network of flies. Lotus Sun felt as if her horizons had been broadened. It's nothing. Loopy Toad chuckled and looked at Sun Yinger. Don't forget, you still owe me 20 sacks of big meat flies. Sun Yinger, she had almost forgotten that she actually had this assignment. This was the private agreement she had made with Loopy Toad in the secret room of the Heavenly Tao Magic Cube. It was an agreement she had to fulfill even if she had to cry. So, what do you want me to do? Loopy Toad already knew what on earth Lotus Sun wanted to do. It stared at the 9 love letters in the girl's hand. Find these girls and directly swallow them? No. You just need to help me find them, and leave the rest to me, said Lotus Sunday. Amazing, you want to kill them yourself? Loopy Toad teased. Who said I was going to kill them? I'm just trying to reason with them and move their emotions. Lotus Sun got out of bed and bowed to Loopy Toad. Please, Loopy Toad. Good attitude. I can help you. It's also very easy for this king to find these girls. Loopy Toad walked over and sniffed the scent on the letters, and it already knew what was going on. Go collect the magic cube first, I'll take you to them when I come back. Speaking up to this point, Loopy Toad frowned. But it's very strange, I can smell the scent of an acquaintance on these letters. Including the pile you gave me on your bed. The scent of an acquaintance? I'm sure. I can't be wrong. After I became a divine beast, my sense of smell has improved a lot. All of these letters have Wang Zhen's scent on them. Wang Zhen? Lotus Sun was shocked. You mean? Wang Zhen disguised himself as 100 girls to write love letters to Wang Ling? Because the scenario in her head was too shocking, Lotus Sun couldn't recover for a long time. If these letters were all written by Wang Zhen, then she couldn't help asking, why was there such a bored person in this world? I didn't say that. Loopy Toad sweated as it stared at Lotus Sun and said, have you ever thought of another possibility? Perhaps these letters were originally written for Wang Zhen. Chapter 1397. After Loopy Toad's reminder, Lotus Sun finally realized the blind spot she had when examining the letters. All the letters here seemed to have classmate Wang written on them. What was strange was that there was a strange gap between the word Wang and student in many of the letters. If these letters hadn't been written to Wang Ling in the first place, then everything now seemed to make sense. Brother Wang Zhen's letters. But why would he do that? Lotus Sun was full of doubts, but after learning the whole story, her mood was indeed a lot better. It's probably just a simple prank to see your reaction. Loopy Toad hit the nail on the head. My reaction? Lotus Sun sighed in her heart. It was too difficult for her. Chasing after Wang Ling was already difficult enough. She also had to be teased by these seniors in the cultivation world. So does Sister Chingy know about this? Lotus Sun asked. Probably not, said Loopy Toad. Lotus Sun's expression was calm as she gave a kind smile. Then I think it's necessary for her to know. Loopy Toad, Lotus Sun, so now, there's only one person left. Loopy Toad was puzzled. What one person? Lotus Sun, now I know that the letters addressed to classmate Wang were all written for brother Wang Zhen. That can already be ruled out. Then there's only one letter left. There's actually a real love letter? Loopy Toad and Sun Yinger were blank when they heard this. It's written, classmate Wang Ling. Moreover, this was the main target of my 9 letters. Lotus Sun pulled out this letter with a pink cover from the other 9 letters and said. Do you need me to help you find it? No need, this girl even wrote down the address and signature. Lotus Sun frowned slightly. Her name is Jiang Yingying. Jiang Yingying? Loopy Toad felt that this girl's name was a little familiar, as if it had heard it somewhere before. It felt that this matter had become a little complicated. Let's collect the Rubik's Cube first. In any case, there's only one opponent. When I come back, I'll meet her myself. Lotus Sun smiled. From the original 9 opponents to just one opponent, the burden in the girl's heart was indeed lifted a lot. Then where's the 3rd Rubik's Cube? Sun Yinger asked. Sword King Realm. Loopy Toad raised its head and looked at Lotus Sunday. I heard that this is where Lord Jinka was born. Back then, in order to collect the Sword King ancient pillars, Tyrant had repeatedly barged into the Sword King world. That was an extremely dangerous secret realm in the universe. The location was in the eastern district of the Milky Way. There was a sword storm outside the Sword King realm, and it was accompanied by a strong gravitational force. If one's cultivation was insufficient, they would be immediately sucked in and turned into dust. Therefore, overall, the difficulty of this mission was no easier than the previous one. It was far more dangerous than Divine Tao Star. However, the main danger was focused on breaking through from the outside. As long as he could successfully break through the blade storm, it would be much easier to move around in the Sword King realm. At the same time, in order to ensure that the operation went smoothly, another core member of the war sect helped out. "Lady Bai Qiao, you can come out now," Loopy Toad shouted as it looked out the window. With a flash of a brown sword, a white-haired otaku with headphones around her neck appeared in front of everyone. She was still wearing the iconic pajamas of the fire-breathing dragon. "Senior Bai Qiao," Lotus Sun greeted. Bai Qiao's face was a little red. "Hurry up and get to work. I specially took the time to help you. I hope you'll be quick at retrieving the Rubik's Cube and don't be clumsy and waste time." Humph. Not only wasn't Lotus Sun angry in the face of such a poisonous tongue, she even thought the girl in front of her was a little cute. That was Bai Qiao's personality to begin with. Lotus Sun remembered Audiobook telling her about his experience looking for Bai Qiao in the past. At that time, Bai Qiao had verbally attacked everyone, not even Wang Ling. So it was fine as long as one understood Bai Qiao's words the other way around. "Lord Ma has never been inside the Sword King world, so he could only teleport us to the outskirts. Breaking through the blade storm will be difficult, but I think Lady Bai Qiao has already thought of a way, right?" Loopy Toad wagged its tail as it did its best to talk to Bai Qiao in a pleasant manner. It actually didn't like Bai Qiao's personality very much, but for Jinka's sake, Loopy Toad had to give her some face. A bunch of good-for-nothings. Bai Qiao snorted, then transformed into a scabbard. After a flash of light, the small scabbard gradually grew larger, and then turned into a small immortal warship the size of a sports car. Fortunately, Lotus Sun's bedroom was spacious enough. Even with the addition of a small immortal warship, it didn't feel crowded. "You can actually do this?" This was Loopy Toad's first time seeing a scabbard like this, and it was instantly amazed. "This is the skin transformation spell," Bai Qiao said. When playing games, sometimes it didn't matter if your skills weren't good, but your skin had to look good. As a veteran otaku, Bai Qiao had done a lot of research on her scabbard skin, so she would often use the skin transformation spell, inspired by the game, to make her look even more gorgeous. Although Bai Qiao now looked like a small immortal warship, she was in fact still a scabbard, and there was a slot at the end of the immortal warship for a sword to be inserted. This Galaxy Magic Mecha skin had been inspired by Bai Qiao after playing automatic chess recently. Even Bai Qiao herself hadn't expected it to come in handy so soon. Sitting on the immortal warship, the genuine leather sofa inside made Lotus Sun feel very comfortable. "Senior Bai Qiao is amazing. Do I need you to tell me that?" Bai Qiao sounded a little pleased with herself. "Then, let's go." As soon as she said that, Lord Ma's golden teleportation light fell from the sky on time to transport everyone to the outside of Sword King World's universe secret land in the eastern part of the Milky Way. In the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling sensed Loopy Toad, Lotus Sun, and Bai Qiao's auras disappear from Earth, and immediately knew that they had already begun the retrieval mission. "Sword Master, Bai Qiao, is it really okay?" On the side, Jinka couldn't help asking. Wang Ling stretched out his hand and rubbed Jinka's soft white hair. Actually, he could feel Jinka's worry. Although Sword King World was indeed his hometown, it was really too chaotic. Since ancient times, countless spirit swords had been born in Sword King World, and from the moment they were born, they had done everything they could to escape that place. Trillions of spirit swords had struggled endlessly over thousands of years as they tried to break out of the encirclement. In the end, they had failed, and turned into sword graves in Sword King World. Jinka remembered that it had taken him a long time to break through Sword King World back then. About a week? He had used his sword chi to create an opening, and had successfully escaped the storm of blades. Following closely behind him was the word pre. Chapter 1398. There weren't many naturally formed universe secret regions. Within the outer domain Milky Way, there were less than 40 secret realms in total. The factors that led to the formation of a universe mystic realm were extremely complex. The 10 great families of the divine realm had once invested a massive amount of resources into exploring these mystic realms in order to research the reasons behind their formation. Even now, they still hadn't fully understood what was going on. Currently, he only knew that the formation of the universe secret realm was related to the primal chaos. Strictly speaking, there wasn't much of a difference whether the research was done or not. However, in order to ensure their position as the top family in the divine domain, the 10 great families of the divine domain still had to conduct research. Moreover, since there was research, there would definitely be research funding. As for where the profits had gone, only the members of the 10 great clans themselves knew. Researching the essence of the universe secret regions was to deepen one's understanding of the secret regions. From there, it would be easier to obtain precious resources from the secret regions. To put it bluntly, it was all for sponsored partnerships. Taking the Sword King realm as an example, if one could ignore the Blade Tempest and freely enter and exit the Sword King realm, bring in and out the spirit swords that were born naturally, and then resell them, one would make a fortune. Wang Ling did have the ability to do so. But father and mother Wang had taught him from a young age not to use his abilities to make money. So the truth was that if Wang Ling could use his ability, he could definitely become as rich as a country. Forget about the Sword King world, it would be enough if he could sell all the death substitute talismans he had drawn. Using her Galaxy Magic Mecha skin, Bai Qiao safely led everyone through the storm of blades. These blades, which contained high levels of spirit power, were in fact as fine as dust. Imagine, if every grain of sand on the beach was a blade, what kind of feeling would that be? If a cultivator was drawn into it, without an extremely high realm, he would not be able to return. Even if he could withstand it for a while, the layer of Blade Tempest was simply too thick. One mistake and he might die. Even if you could travel there in the end, you would still have to consider the problem of returning. Although Bai Qiao's body was made of peach wood, it was harder than a sword made of metal. As she weaved through the air, the mecha armor's skin glowed with a metallic light, like dazzling stars. In the end, Bai Qiao led everyone to successfully land on a barren mountain near the coast. This was the famous Broken Sword Mountain in the Sword King realm. Rather than calling it a mountain, it was more like a huge broken sword that was hundreds of feet tall. Rumor has it that this was a huge sword with a very thick body. It was born in the Sword King realm thousands of years ago. He was as big as a mountain when he was born. Many sword spirits felt that big sword was a rare genius. Maybe he could challenge and break out of the blade storm. And then, there was no then. The greatsword's blade spirit had failed to break through. Its body was split into two. Half of it fell into the sea of swords, while the other half turned into broken swords that were forever stuck on the shore, becoming the Broken Sword Mountain. Subsequently, it became a major scenic spot in the Sword King realm forever. Over the past 1,000 years, countless newly born sword spirits had visited this place and carved their own views on the story of the great sword spirit charging into the blade storm. If you don't court death, you won't die. So, what's the use of being big? Isn't it just a fat otaku sword? Thank goodness I'm not a great sword. I'd better stay in the Sword King realm obediently. Casually charging into the blade storm is courting death. Lotus Sun could see these words carved everywhere on the mountain wall of Broken Sword Mountain. Needless to say, these words had come from other sword spirits. These good-for-nothings always complain about heaven and earth. When Bai Qiao saw the words on the mountain wall, she rolled her eyes on the spot. She had also heard about this great sword. Back in the Sword King realm, when all the sword spirits were born, their first thought was to charge into the blade storm, even if they didn't succeed in the end and paid the price with their lives. This used to be seen as a kind of glory. But now, more and more sword spirits interpreted this as overestimating one's capabilities, and used this as a warning to future sword spirits not to challenge the blade storm unless they were confident enough. As a result, there were now more and more sword spirits in the Sword King realm. Furthermore, the new sword spirits were influenced by this new concept, and became more and more cowardly. Later, sword spirits like Jinka and Yu, who had once successfully escaped the Sword King realm, became legends in the stories of this new generation of sword spirits. This was once thought to be impossible. Has Senior Bai Qiao ever returned here? Lotus Sun asked curiously. She comes back when she wants to, and goes out when she wants to. It's nothing special. Bai Qiao shrugged and sighed. It's a pity that the new generation of sword spirits aren't good enough, and they're getting worse with each generation. In comparison, her family's Jinka was much more outstanding. It had only taken him a week to successfully break through the blade storm and become the publicly acknowledged #1 sword spirit. But as the saying went, a hero doesn't boast about his past achievements. Bai Qiao felt that there was no need to show off her past achievements. Without further ado, Lotus Sun immediately released Mysterious Sea's sword Qi in an attempt to sense the location of the third Heavenly Dao magic cube. But this time, it didn't go as smoothly as it had on Divine Dao Star. There were too many Sword King realm sword spirits, and the sword Qi was all intertwined to form a natural barrier, making it impossible for Mysterious Sea's sword Qi to spread out smoothly. This is why Lord Ling asked me to bring you here. While your battle strength is strong, it's mainly focused on Mysterious Sea. Don't think of yourself as invincible, you should still ask for help when you need it. It's also wrong to be too arrogant and complacent, Bai Qiao reminded her. This was actually what the other people in Battle Sect thought as well, but considering that they wouldn't say it so easily out of fear of losing face, Bai Qiao volunteered to step forward and be the bad guy. Hearing this, Lotus Sun didn't say anything unnecessary, and just accepted the advice with a smile on her face. Senior Bai Qiao is right, I'll definitely keep it in mind. Bai Qiao nodded in satisfaction. Just wait, I also have a few friends in the Sword King realm. They'll lead us to the magic cube this time. Friends? Lotus Sun raised an eyebrow. Less than 3 minutes later, Lotus Sun sensed through her sword Qi that 3 people were approaching them at the speed of light 100 meters ahead. 1 woman and 2 men. The female sword spirit in the lead was wearing a tight black leather battle suit that perfectly outlined her sexy and curvaceous figure. Very strong sword Qi, Loopy Toad said after sensing it for a bit. Very quickly, the 3 sword spirits turned into streaks of light and appeared in front of them. They then knelt down on one knee and greeted Bai Qiao. Lady Bai Qiao. We are late to welcome you. Please forgive us. Forget it, all of you, get up. Bai Qiao wanted to blame them, but felt that arguing would just delay her from finishing her mission earlier and going back to play the game. So, she dropped the matter. This is Carter. Pointing at the female sword spirit in front of her, Bai Qiao introduced her to Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad. Carter's true form is a dagger, and his ultimate skill is Death Lotus. He can split himself into thousands of pieces and then form tornadoes. Lotus Sun, then, she turned her gaze to the remaining 2 male sword spirits. One of them had a face as white as snow, and in modern terms, looked like a sissy. He had the potential to be an idol star, and was the kind of guy that girls really liked. The other one had a full beard and was dressed like a Spartan warrior. This one has very white skin, he's called Endless. His ultimate skill is a one-hit kill, and he's the sword spirit of choice for cultivators who like to use critical strike sword techniques. Bai Qiao introduced them one by one. This one with the full beard, you can call him Old Man. Among the sword spirits, he can achieve temporary invincibility for 5 seconds, and can even block Jinka's world-annihilating sword. After 5 seconds, he'll be an Iron Fool, and the cooldown time is very long. Lotus Sun, then classmate Wang Ling, Bai Qiao, oh, Lord Ling is an exception. Even if he's invincible for 50 seconds, it's no use, he'll still crush him. Hearing this, the 3 sword spirits sighed in their hearts. Actually, that wasn't their name at all, but Bai Qiao had forcibly changed their names. She said that their ultimate skill was very similar to a certain game's mechanism, and that it was easier to call them that way. Chapter 1399. After Bai Qiao gave the basic introduction, Lotus Sun had a general understanding of the three sword spirits in front of her. Greetings, seniors. Carter, Wujin and Old Barbarian shuddered at this form of address, and they really didn't dare accept it. Miss Sun, you can just call us by our names, there's no need to call us seniors. We were born from the universe, and it's only by coincidence that we're older than you. In terms of combat strength, we should call you seniors, Wujin said politely. Seniors know me? Lotus Sun was amazed. Because Bai Qiao hadn't introduced her. Miss Sun is too famous now. At least in the circle of sword spirits who follow Lord Jinka and Lord Bai Qiao, there's no one who doesn't know your name, Wujin answered truthfully. In fact, the reason why Lotus Sun's name was so resounding actually had something to do with Mysterious Sea. It was as Limitless had said. Sword spirits were born from the universe. It was the same for Mysterious Sea. All the swords in the world come from the Sword King world. This means that the Sword King world is the origin of all sword spirits. That's right. But strictly speaking, not all sword spirits come from the Sword King world. Wujin told Lotus Sun about the origin of sword spirits. He gave an example. For example, Mysterious Sea was in fact a native sword spirit born on Earth. Sword spirits who weren't born in the Sword King world were in fact the descendants of the spirit swords who had fled the Sword King world. As for the relationship between Wang Ling and Jinka, it was a mutual resonance between two experts. After Jinka escaped the Sword King world, he had been in a deep sleep for a very long time, and hadn't chosen his own master. Because no one was good enough for him. Until Wang Ling was born. Sword spirits can also reproduce, but they reproduce asexually. After two sword spirits meet each other's eyes, they can enter chaos, and the universe will then give birth to a new sword spirit. Wujin explained patiently, of course, Lord Jinka and Lord Bai Qiao are clearly one sword, but the sword body and scabbard give birth to a spirit at the same time. There's no other sword like this in the entire Sword King world. Saying this, he couldn't help smiling bitterly. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this kind of sword, which was born with a wife, had an amazing bone structure. The newborn sword spirits produced by sword spirits would not appear in the Sword King realm when they were born. Instead, it would choose its own sword master within the universe based on its own characteristics. Therefore, many of the so-called sword spirits that were born on Earth did not come from the Sword King realm. However, his parents belonged to the Sword King realm. Since it wasn't a sword spirit born in the Sword King realm, the quality of the sword spirit would naturally be different. The quality of the sword spirit nurtured in the Sword King realm was beyond imagination. Therefore, there was news of many upper-class cultivators coming to the Sword King realm to look for swords, only to perish in the outer layer of the Blade Storm. If they're all sword spirits from the Sword King world, from a genetic point of view, the quality of the new sword spirits they give birth to shouldn't be too bad. Loopy Toad frowned, feeling that it had discovered something incredible. Sword spirits also need to be well matched in terms of social status. If it was a mix and match, the quality would naturally not be too high. For example, it's obviously a great sword, but it's a short dagger. Wujin said. I see. Loopy Toad nodded. It was for this reason that most of the local sword spirits in the Sword King realm actually looked down on non-purebred hybrids from other places. Miss Sun, do you now know why you and Miss Mysterious Sea are so famous? Wujin said with a wry smile. At that moment, realization dawned on her. Her Mysterious Sea wasn't a local sword spirit from the Sword King realm, but because it had fused with two Heavenly Dao magic cubes, its battle strength had soared. It was directly ranked 8th on the Sword King realm's ranking list. For a non-purebred sword spirit to be able to do this was undoubtedly a vicious blow to the sword spirits in the Sword King realm. Sun Yinger smiled. I really want to know who the 3 unlucky bastards who have been knocked off the list are. Bai Qiao looked at Sun Yinger expressionlessly. It's the 3 of them. Lotus Sun, Sun Yinger, Loopy Toad, before Mysterious Sea had leveled up, Carter, Wujin and Old Barbarian had been ranked 8th, 9th and 10th respectively. Now that mysterious C had come, Carter's position had been replaced, and Wu Jin had become 9th. Wu Jin had become 10th. And the most unlucky person was none other than Old Barbarian. He had been directly knocked off the top 10 list, and was now struggling in 11th place. After that, Carter led her and the others through the intricate magic arrays of the Sword King realm. About 10 minutes later, they finally arrived at Sword Capital, which was in the heart of the Sword King realm. The third magic cube was in Sword Capital. This was the largest capital city in the entire Sword King realm, and its tall metal walls gave off a simple and unadorned aura. According to Wu Jin's introduction, all the buildings in the Sword King realm had been forged from sword spirits who had failed to break into the Sword Blade Storm. After failing to break into the Sword Blade Storm, the sword spirits would forever return to their original form and lose their luster. This indicated that the sword spirit inside the sword had died, and the sword itself had become a material that could be reused. Why didn't you recycle the broken sword on the edge of the Sea of Swords? Sun Yinger asked curiously. It's now a scenic spot, people will complain if we recycle it. Also, it's too big, it won't be easy to recycle it, said Wu Jin. As they passed the city gate, several sword spirits stationed there bowed to Wu Jin and Carter. Lord Wu Jin. Lord Carter. Then, when they saw Bai Qiao behind Wu Jin, they broke out in a cold sweat and knelt down on the spot. Lady. Lady Bai Qiao, get up. Bai Qiao nodded habitually. A group of people passed by the city gate. Then, Sun Yinger's words pierced Barbarian Old Man's heart. By the way, why didn't they call you? I'm not worthy. Barbarian Old Man's heart was bleeding, and he looked like he was in extreme pain. When a tree falls, people scatter, and when a wall falls, everyone kicks it. This was no different in the Sword King realm. Barbarian was such a miserable man. Is the magic cube still stable? Lotus Sun asked on the way. In reply to Miss Sun, the magic cube is still very stable at the moment. Because the magic cube of the universe isn't damaged at the moment, the probability of a riot is much lower. But it's better to replace it with a new magic cube as soon as possible, Wu Jin replied. As they walked along Central Street, they attracted the attention of a lot of sword spirits, but no one dared talk about them on the street, because Bai Qiao's aura was too strong. By the way, who's the manager of Sword Capital now? Bai Qiao asked. She hadn't been back for a while, and didn't know the situation. It's Nine Nether, Carter replied. Oh, so it's that kid. Bai Qiao immediately understood. Who's Nine Nether? A sawtooth sword, currently ranked 5th on the sword list, and the manager of Sword Capital. As expected, it's a manager, of course it's a manager. When Bai Qiao said this, there was suddenly a proud expression on her face. The first on the sword list has the final say in Sword Capital. Sword list of the Sword King realm, only those who have been mentioned so far first, Jinka, Bai Qiao 2nd, Prediction 5th, Nine Nether 8th, Mysterious C 9th, Carter 10th, Boundless 11th, Old Barbarian. Chapter 1400. Sword City had a strong cultural and historical atmosphere. Just like those ancient towns left behind on Earth, they still maintained the simple style of the old era. With the progress of modernization, the number of ancient buildings left by the people of the past was decreasing year by year. Those that needed to be demolished were demolished, and those that needed to be renovated were renovated. Tall buildings made of reinforced concrete were gradually replacing history. So the Songhai city they lived in was pretty special. In such a first-tier city, the architectural style was indeed a rare mix of ancient and modern styles. Hence, the young girl didn't feel uncomfortable at all when she arrived at the Sword City's ancient street. There were a lot of old streets like this in Songhai City, and she had always wanted to find a time to invite Wang Ling to take a look. Lotus Sun softly hummed the melody of a pop song. Although she didn't sing any words, Bai Qiao could guess the name of the song right away. Li Ronghao's Old Street. Walking on such a street, having such background music was indeed very fitting. Back then, the Sword King realm was in chaos. There was no such civilization and order. Although the sword spirit was born from the universe, it was just a spirit in the beginning. It was Tao ancestor Wang who had brought human civilization here and named it the Sword King realm. Then, the spirit becomes the sword spirit, Wu Jin explained on the way to the Sword City Royal Palace. So the reason why the sword spirit is in human form now is largely because Tao ancestor Wang brought human civilization with him? Lotus Sun asked. That's right. However, not all sword spirits were humanoid. There are also a small number of alien sword spirits. They look like animals, plants, and even extraterrestrial life forms. Wu Jin said, however, these appearances are not fixed. As long as one's cultivation is high enough, the sword spirit can freely choose its own appearance. At this time, old barbarians said with a smile, for example, Carter. Her initial appearance was a garlic tortoise. Garlic tortoise, this is the seed of the wondrous frog. If it wasn't for her loyalty to Lady Bai Qiao, she might not have changed into a human form. After Barbarian finished speaking, Lotus Sun glanced at Carter. She saw that the woman in front of her was completely unperturbed by Wu Jin's dark history. She didn't take Barbarian's words to heart at all. This was one of the 3 unmarried women. In some sense, he was a little similar to Wang Ling, and Lotus Sun felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. The inner world of people with facial paralysis might be similar. Therefore, communicating more with people with facial paralysis would help increase the experience of communicating with people with similar facial paralysis. As they passed by a sword school, Lotus Sun suddenly thought of a question. By the way, can I buy swords in the Sword King realm? Lotus Sun had actually been thinking about this as well. In order to deal with that groundhog, Nguyen had put in a lot of effort, and the girl had always been grateful to her. This was a huge favor, and Lotus Sun had been thinking about how to repay it. Now that she had finally arrived at the Sword King realm, she wondered if she could help Wan, who had yet to be born, choose a suitable spirit sword. Lotus Sun calculated the time. There was still half a month before December 30th. Her due date was approaching. If she could find a suitable spirit sword for Wan, she would be willing to pay any price. Wu Jin said, what Miss Sun saw was the Sword King realm's hired sword pavilions. Generally speaking, they can openly hire sword spirits to protect them. The employers include cultivators, as well as sword spirits from other Sword King realms. Sword spirit hiring sword spirit? Yes, this Sword King realm is very rich in mineral resources. If we can obtain rare ores, we can upgrade the sword body. This will increase the success rate of breaking through the blade storm. Speaking up to this point, Wu Jin frowned. As for buying a sword, human currency isn't worth much in the Sword King realm, so the best way is to use an equivalent exchange. As long as an agreement is reached, a sword spirit will be willing to sign a contract. After Wu Jin said this, Bai Qiao added, there are very few cultivators who have the strength to enter the Sword King realm, and a sword spirit contract is usually signed on the basis that both parties agree. Of course, if you really like it, you can't rule out the possibility of signing the contract without asking for money. To put it simply, Lord Ling's little sister hasn't been born yet, but I'm sure you've seen her strength. If she grows up and comes to the Sword King realm herself, there will definitely be sword spirits who will be willing to follow her without asking for money. Right now, she isn't that famous yet. If you want to find a spirit sword for her in advance, I'm afraid you'll have to pay a huge price. The price Bai Qiao was talking about was the price Lotus Sun would have to pay for not relying on Wang Ling's face. Otherwise, given her and Jinka's status in the Sword King realm, countless sword spirits would be willing to come for an interview and become Wang Yuan's spirit sword with just a shout. But that wouldn't be interesting. Bai Qiao could tell that the girl wanted to rely on her own strength to choose a spirit sword for Wang Yuan. Unfortunately, this wasn't Earth. In a situation where money didn't circulate, the condition for buying a sword didn't exist at all. Even if she used items to make up for it, the only valuable thing Lotus Sun could offer was probably this mysterious sea in her hand. It wasn't like she could sell mysterious sea to exchange for a sword for Wang Yuan. Thus, Lotus Sun sank into deep thought at Bai Qiao's words. I remember, the Sword Dao Conference is in 2 days. If you win the competition, will you be rewarded with a piece of Sword God alloy? If you can use the alloy as a bargaining chip, I think most of the sword spirits in the Sword King realm will want to come for an interview. At that moment, Old Barbarian opened his mouth and pointed out a bright path for the helpless girl. But as soon as he said this, Wu Jin on the side was blank for a moment, and then he patted his head. Oh, right. I remember, it seems like there's something like that. I'll also attend the Sword Dao Conference. After that, Wu Jin hurriedly nudged Carter next to him with his elbow. After a moment of silence, Carter nodded and said, there is one, the Sword Dao Conference. There's something like that, right? I think this is a good opportunity, Miss Sun. Old Barbarian quickly followed up on Carter's words and continued, if you can get this piece of Sword God alloy, you can choose a sword for Daoist Nguyen. When the time comes, the sword spirits who will come for an interview will probably line up from Sword City to Sword Sea. I'll participate. Lotus Sun said seriously, but how do I sign up? Ha ha ha, we'll do it for you, Miss Sunday. Old Barbarian patted his chest and said. Thank you so much, seniors. Lotus Sun said with a wide smile. Hearing this, the corners of Bai Qiao's mouth finally couldn't help twitching. She felt that these 3 people were acting a little too much. What if *** King Sword Dao Conference? If there really was such a Sword Dao Conference, how could she not know about it? In order to curry favor with this girl, they had directly held a Sword Dao Conference in the air, but Bai Qiao wasn't in a hurry to expose them. She wanted to see how on earth these 3 people were going to wrap things up. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.